no, the Hicksons, they when they did our podcast, they did they had a media company, so they lived in an RV. They didn't have a house.
Yeah.
And so they would literally drive to their clients, film stuff for the whole year, and then be done. So that's why they came back to our area like twice.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
And they were 10th Planet down in Tucson. And so, they would hit the 10 planets, and they really liked our gym. But now they got a home base and started their own gym in Austin.
Yeah, I seen that. I follow him because I've listened to quite a bit of his episodes. They're pretty good, man.
That's what was a bummer. They had the Eclipse down in Austin in November, and I didn't realize he was only like an hour away, or I would have extended my flight and tried to make it over there and stuff. But
so he opened up that gym, like that's his gym, or is he partnered? Or
yeah, he's partnered. Like there's a because he's just a blue belt. I think he might have got his purple belt. But yeah, so
pulling that up to you.
He partnered.
You could pull it up to you if you want.
Yeah, he partnered up with a black belt and started that school. So I think they're doing the marketing part of it and stuff. And
that's pretty neat. How was your holidays, man?
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Goes by pretty quick, doesn't it?
Can't complain. Like, I wish I would have got more stuff done, but
yeah, I know that's always the case, dude. So, Jeremy, owner of 10th Planet and Lone Wolf MMA. How do those two go together?
Well, we started off with MMA. I originally started with Earl Walker up in St. Joe, who's probably one of the best boxing coaches in the state or in the area, the Midwest, in my opinion. He was doing martial arts, self-defense, kind of on the Jeet Kune Do philosophy. He studied Bruce Lee a lot. And so we did everything. We did a little bit of grappling, takedowns, kickboxing.
What's the Jeet Kune Do? What is that?
Jeet Kune Do? That's Bruce Lee's philosophy.
The mix of like different martial arts, or is that what that was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just not basically having a set system and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So he kind of took that philosophy and he's pretty impressive. I just had him down at my school last year.
Yeah, I seen your post on that.
He's 60 and like it was like going back in a time machine and sparring with him again. Like it's something that I've always wanted to do, and just you own your own gym and stuff, and it's just hard to get up there and train and stuff, and you're hurt all the time too. And I'm hoping to have him back because we filmed it. And then apparently the guy that filmed it erased the film, and so we don't have it. And yeah, it was like I was so, because I could have got it off of our cameras, but I mean, yeah, because it was pretty awesome. Like we did like 3 rounds, and
he was your coach.
Yeah, he was my first martial arts coach. I was with him a solid 3 years of training, and then kind of off and on in the 4th year. And he, around that time, he kind of headed towards the boxing route because, that's where the money was. And it was, boxing was super popular back then. Yeah. And I was more into the grappling side of it. So I kind of faded off, studied my own stuff for like 4 years. And then, was kind of practicing with my brother, my roommate. And then, we started in, my old roommate, he bought a house, and we started in his attic, which was pretty dangerous. And just me, him, and my brother. And then finally there was a spot up in King City, which is a small town north of St. Joe. And so I just rented it just so we'd have a place to train. I wasn't really looking to start a school or anything.
Is that where you grew up at St. Joe?
I grew up in a town called Union Star, which is about 9 miles away from King City. Like it's a town of 400 people. Mm-hmm. I had family that lived in King City. Like my grandpa, he owned a gun shop, the Lone Wolf gun shop. And he closed the gun shop down the year we opened. And so I was just always, ever since I was little, his CB sign was Lone Wolf. He had the picture of the Lone Wolf on his wall. And since I could remember, I was just infatuated with it. It was just something I always gravitated. And so when I started my gym, I was kind of thinking of names, and like I wanted to do that. And then, basically I chose that name because that was kind of our philosophy from the beginning, that, you know, we wanted to be a group of individuals, and us being individuals and having different games and different styles was going to make all of us better.
Right.
So,
right. Can the MMA world be kind of tribal? Is that why you kind of did the Lone Wolf name? Or?
No, because back then, well, first of all, I didn't want to make it about me. Like most martial arts schools, it's, you know, the name of the person, martial arts, and that just is not me. So I didn't want. There's been so many times where other people thought that other people owned my gym, and that's the way I would like it. You know, I don't want it to be about me. And so that was part of it. But no, when we started in October of 2004. Mm-hmm. So the first Ultimate Fighter was in January of 2005. So
before we get into that, take me down memory lane. You said you were living in a city a couple miles out of Kingsville, you said?
So King City. Yeah. So I lived in Union Star.
Did you go to school out there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All through high school?
Yep. I grew up there. My family grew up there. My grandparents grew up there. Both my grandparents were farmers.
Mm-hmm. Was there a decent grappling scene, like wrestling out there?
No.
Did you do any of that?
No, we were so small we didn't have wrestling. Really? We played 8-man football. Yeah.
8-man football?
Yeah. Yeah. Which you had to be in shape to play 8-man football.
Yeah. I've never even heard of 8-man football. What is that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just football. It's just there's only 8 players. Yeah.
Okay.
You still have you have 5 on the line and then 3 backs, and so you can have wide receivers. But
oh shit!
But
is there a different set of rules for that?
Not really.
Oh, okay.
Still 10 yards for first down. The field shorter. It's I think it's a 80-yard field instead of 100.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but other than that, there's not much difference.
Okay. So you didn't do any wrestling in high school. So
nope.
So when did you start? So you're going through high school. You're doing football. You get out of high school. Then what? Like you go to college?
Yeah, I went to college in another small town, Highland, Kansas. I think it's the oldest college in Kansas.
You just love small towns.
I guess. No, the reason I went there for at the time they were the only one that had that I could find that had computer animation. And so
is that what you were going for?
Yeah, I was somewhere in the art field. Mm-hmm. And so I went there for that, and it was just a JUCO. So I was just going to be there for 2 years and then go someplace else. Mm-hmm. I kind of dabbled with playing football there, which I'm glad I didn't. But yeah, so I started working at Walmart in St. Joe, and so I started working nights, and I always wanted to do martial arts, but I just didn't have the situation where my parents would take me and didn't know where to go. And a guy I was working with, like I was studying Bruce Lee a lot, and a guy I was talking to said, yeah, I go to a place and they do like Jeet Kune Do philosophy. And I was like, what? In St. Joe? Like never heard of it. And so, yeah, I went down there and yeah, it was a pretty cool first. They brought me on the mats, which was really rare. And so, yeah, I was hooked, and I just trained. He had me teach, within a year or whatever, and gave me a key. And so there for a while, I was training 7 days a week. Even when he wasn't having class, I was going down there.
What year was that?
It had been 97, I think.
97?
96, yeah,
97. Then, when did the UFC start? Was that
93?
93.
Yeah, and see, I was watching, because one of the other guys had told me about the UFC, and so I was renting those DVDs, and so I was already like, oh, this is what I want to do, and then I found out about Earl's, and then went there, and it just all
How were you guys
worked.
getting those DVDs?
They weren't DVDs, they were VHS back
VHS?
then. Yeah, you had to go rent them. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and like the first one didn't come out for 5 or 6 years later.
Yeah.
Like you could get, I think 3 was the first one that I ever watched, and then it was just like, yeah, and then it got to the point where they were coming out, and then you would get them when they were coming out. But yeah, it was all on VHS.
Yeah, I was watching that 10 Planet documentary that Brandon, what's his last name?
McCaffrey?
McHughes. The 20 Years in Orbit documentary that just came out on YouTube. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it came out like a couple months back. But they were talking about how nobody's seen the first UFC because everybody just thought it was fake. So nobody watched it. But the second UFC, that's when everybody was like, "Oh shit, this is real."
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah,
man.
and then the first one was pretty disappointed when you watch it, like especially because Hoist tapped out Ken Shamrock, and Ken Shamrock was literally crawling around on all fours as he's sitting in a rear naked choke, and it was just like, how could you be that bad? Like,
nobody understood.
Like, you were already a grappler, like you'd already done the sport. How could you just be crawling around on all fours while you're getting choked? And
was that kind of your like opening to jiu-jitsu? Seeing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was
pretty much probably everybody.
That was everybody's opening. Like, and even back then, nobody. I was showing people it, like, you got to watch this, and like nobody had a clue it existed. I didn't have a clue it existed if it wouldn't have been for the guys I worked with. So,
how long were gyms skeptical of jiu-jitsu? Was it quite a while, or did they, as soon as they seen that, they were like, we got to start teaching this?
I mean, it was still so funny. And it was like being in the Midwest, it just wasn't big. It's not like, I mean, I'm trying to think of when the first MMA fights were around here. I mean, even that took a long time, you know, because like when we started our gym, fights were still like few and far between most of the time. Like the first time my fighters ever fought was at a boxing match, and they just threw in some MMA fights.
What year was that again?
Man, so we started in 2004. We probably had a fight in 2005. Yeah. And so, crazy. Yeah. And there was just,
because when I was in high school, I don't remember hearing, I remember hearing a little bit about the UFC, but not really anybody talking about it. It was all boxing, you know, like,
and see, right before that, it got banned. Like, it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, the only place you could watch it was on Dish Network. And luckily, my friend, one of the friends the addict that we started in, like, I lived with him at another house, and he had Dish, and so we were able to get the pay-per-views back then. Or like, like when Frank Shamrock fought Tito, which was a huge moment in MMA. It's kind of the first rope-a-dope. That was only on Dish. Like, you couldn't get it on cable, you couldn't get it on anything.
I wonder how much it was back then. $10.
It was $25.99, I think,
really?
If I remember right. Yeah.
That's crazy, man. Yeah, because I remember, you know, when I was growing up, I always wanted to do boxing, but, you know, I had a mom that was not going to agree with that. She was like, hell no, you're not doing that.
I did martial arts for a long time before I told my mom.
And then the thing with the martial arts is, like, I feel like back then you would just see karate gyms, especially in the Northland, you know, like I would see just karate gyms, and that didn't really appeal much to me. You know, I mean, I don't know. At that time, it didn't. You know, when you're younger and you see the guys with the gis on, it's just not really appealing, I guess. You know. Yeah. And then wrestling, you had the singlets, and then that wasn't really appealing either. You know, it's like, oh man, you know, that's actually funny. I talk about this with my coach, Coach Andrew. He's a wrestler. And I'm like, why didn't they ever change the uniform in wrestling to get more guys to join? Because I've heard that many times. Guys don't want to wear that. He's like, well, no. I mean, he's like, actually, a lot of them like it. I was like, maybe. I don't know, man. You think that, like, nowadays with the rash guards, they could just put that on. And,
at least put a sleeve on.
Yeah.
Connect them.
Yeah, exactly.
I have heard that some teams and clubs are starting to do that.
Are they?
Wear shorts, spandex shorts, and rash guard.
Because I feel like that's the most attractive thing right now is the rash. I mean, everybody loves no-gi. You know how popular that's getting right now. So you think that the wrestling would kind of, you know, that way they could get probably an extra 10 more guys. Or
and especially with females, like, you know, I would think they would, you know.
Yeah, they would like that better. You know, more cover. You know. Yeah. And not even connected. I mean, they could probably run it. I mean, you don't see too many rash guards coming up at matches in jiu-jitsu. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not really, you know. Yeah. But yeah, man, that's pretty cool. So who was the guy that you kind of looked up to? Is Ken Shamrock kind of your guy in MMA?
No, it was actually Frank Shamrock. So like when I started, I'm a big information whore. Yeah. And so and I think most people that got into MMA, especially back then, we were just, you know, before there were life hacks and stuff, we were those guys that were just always searching for the truth and the better way to do stuff. And so the big thing, the main reason I probably wouldn't have opened my gym if it wasn't for SBG, Matt Whorton, which is the affiliation that Conor McGregor's under. Matt Thornton's out of Portland, Oregon, and he put out a DVD series called Functional JKD, which was, you know, Jeet Kune Do, and their philosophy was aliveness. And it was a 3 VHS series that I got for my 26th birthday, and I probably have watched that 1,000 times. And it was just interviews of their philosophy and how they started their gym and their training. And it was just all about functionality and how they had to throw, you know, some of the things that they did in Jeet Kune Do away just because it wasn't functional. And like, that was the main catalyst of why I wanted to get a room of guys just so I could try that stuff and train in that way. We wore the old karate foam headgear, but they had metal cages on the front, so you just full blast in the face. And we had, I remember we had they were probably below 4-ounce MMA gloves. They were literally padding just over the knuckles and the top of the hand, and then the rest of it was neoprene. So they were just light. And yeah, that was one of the things, like when we moved to St. Joe, we had all started, most of us had been with Earl other than my brother. And so we had done heavy punching without gloves and stuff. And then when we went to St. Joe and started training other guys from scratch, we started realizing, oh, like these guys don't know how to punch right yet, because we didn't have any bags or anything for them to hit. And so we had a couple of guys that were like cracking their hands whenever we would go full on sparring, because they're hitting this cage with, and they had, by that time they had the hybrid gloves, because Combat Sports had already come out with the hybrid gloves, and all of our guys had that. And yeah, we had to start switching the Muay Thai gloves just so guys wouldn't break their hands.
The hybrid, is that just the smaller MMA gloves with
the
pad on it?
Yeah, they have the padding on. Now they're huge, but back then they were a lot smaller.
And back then you guys were just going 100%, right?
Yeah, and it was a lesson learned. Like, that's what like when I started the gym, I wanted to be as realistic as possible. So we wore shin pads. We wore those like regular, probably smaller than regulation MMA gloves, and then we wore the cages, and we went 100%. And but we figured out that we didn't get better by doing that. Whenever we went back and went lighter and didn't wear the cages and controlled our punches, that's when we started, our skill level would rapidly, our learning curve would rapidly speed up. So
yeah, because you guys are just breaking each other down, basically. Not really.
Well, it's just, you don't, you know, you're training your nervous system, and it's like if you're going 100%, and then you're worried about defense big time, and so your nervous system's not going to relax to where you can start slipping punches and looking for shots. You're just going to be throwing as hard as you can and blocking and turning away, and so your brain doesn't have time to develop those skills. And so, and that's the problem with a lot of gyms, especially back then. They would just go in and first day you're sparring hard and stuff. And so, you know, you're going to build a lot of bad habits, because you 100% of your thought process is going to be defensing and then swinging as hard as you can, and then defense again and covering up bad. And
at that time, you guys weren't doing jiu-jitsu, right?
No, we were doing jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
So did you take that from jiu-jitsu? Because I feel like jiu-jitsu is kind of like that, where everything's kind of slow, you know, slower paced. I mean, it's not like full on until later on, and you know.
I really took it from our training at Earl's. Like, I mean, we sparred really hard. One of my main students that went to Earl's too, Roy Babcock. I just talked to him a couple of days ago. And that's what we were talking about, was like, I was talking about how I had Earl back up, and how it was kind of a shock to my students to train the way he trains people, because he's massive, you know, even at 60, 61, like his cardio is off the roof, and he just high pace. And so we were talking about it, and we were just talking about how, like, every time we went in, we were like going, is this the day I'm going to get hurt? Like when we get out, we were just like, we would almost always have something on us, but you know, we were just glad to get out of there without getting hurt. And that's how hard we were going. But at the same time, we were still in control and doing a lot of light sparring. And so it's like, I just kind of reverted back to that. And once I started doing that, you started seeing, I felt how much better I was getting. And then I was seeing how better the other guys were getting when we slowed it down. And then we would go hard once in a while. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, I'm about to say, because there's a balance, right? I mean, the absolutely. Max Holloway method of not sparring at all, don't you think that's a little too far on the other side of the pendulum?
Not at their level. Like,
right.
Like a lot of people don't realize Robbie Lawler didn't spar, and he just literally didn't spar for like 5 years, and that was on his way to becoming a champion. And so those guys have been through the wars. So it's like, to me, you spar hard to get used to that velocity. Mm-hmm. And basically, to me, a lot of the things that going hard gives you is having your opponent be off balance. Because like when you're in control, your opponent's usually balanced. He's not throwing hard enough to where he's going to come off of his back foot. Mm-hmm. And then that opens up a lot of stuff for you. So if you don't ever get that opening, you don't know how to take it. And so it's like, to me, that's what you get from hard sparring.
Right.
And then you just get used to the velocity and the intensity about getting your head knocked off. But other than that, once you've been through that, like, you build a lot more timing by going slow, or I wouldn't say slow, but by pulling your punches, and because you're just getting more reps in. Right. Like when you're going hard, like the shots you're throwing are a lot less.
Right.
And they're a lot less technical. And so when you slow it down, it's you're being more technical, your opponent's being more technical. Mm-hmm. And so your timing and all the aspects of fighting, you get way better, way faster.
Yeah. Kind of similar to flow rolling, right?
Yeah. And like, you know, just like if you flow rolled, like you think flow rolling's won't tax your body, but a lot of times flow rolling, because you don't stop, you know, and that's what I'm saying. You're getting more reps through that flow rolling, mm-hmm. and you're covering more ground, mm-hmm. and going through the sparring reps way more. You're getting way more reps in sparring than you would because you'll get stuck in cross-eyed, and you and him will battle there. He's trying to get what he wants and you're trying to get what you want. Well, you might be stuck there the whole round. So, you know, how much, I heard the best way I heard it, like flow rolling is where, you know, hard rolling is where you're going through a town at 90 miles an hour. How much of that town did you see?
Right.
When you're slow rolling, you're going 20 miles an hour, mm-hmm. and it's like now you see every bit of that
Taking
town.
Everything in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also you're, like you said, you're being put in positions that maybe you wouldn't have been in if you were going 90 miles an hour, you know, muscling your way out of shit, you know, going all crazy. You know, you're actually being put in positions to where like, oh shit, now he has my back. I need to get out of this, or whatever, you know, whatever scenario.
And you're going to get catches that you wouldn't. I mean, that's where a lot of your submission chains will come from is that flow, because you have time to think through it, and your nervous system gets time to use to, when I go to omoplata and he starts to raise me up, now I can switch to a triangle. But it's like if you're going 100%, you're just see it. You're just trying to sit up and do everything you can to get that omoplata instead of relaxing and flowing with his movement to get that next submission. That's
then those repetitions, then you'll be able to see that better when you're going full on.
Well, and feel it, like, because jiu-jitsu's a lot about feeling. Like you have to feel it coming.
Yeah.
And so like flow rolling will get you to feel that thing happening, and that's the hard part about jiu-jitsu is feeling that thing happening and then going right to it, knowing where you're going the whole time. But you know, that's what's great about jiu-jitsu is just there's so many aspects of training, and it's like it's easy to get. We just had a coaches summit a couple weeks ago, and so we're really kind of changing how we're doing classes and stuff, because it's really easy to get into a rut where you just show technique and then you roll, and maybe you'll do a drill, but there's so many ways to drill. There's so many little games that you can play.
Kind of becomes Groundhog Day, and you got to mix it up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just you want to make sure, like, especially with our program, we're trying to hit every way to learn. Like, some people learn visually, some people learn audibly. You know, some people see it better when it's written down on a piece of paper. So it's like with our curriculum, we do all of that. We have videos, we have the curriculum written down, we have a flow chart. We have all that stuff. And so now we're trying to do that on the physical side too. Like, you know, we're isolating the technique, we're playing games where you're having fun and it's just one little goal that you're trying to hit. And then we have even bigger drills where it's like, now it's more like a competition. We have flowing where we just flow from position to position or submission to submission. And so we're just hitting all those different areas of learning, but it's hard to do. Like, it's way easier to teach technique, and especially when you have a curriculum, like, it's easy to go in and go, oh, what are we doing? All right, I can, you know, I've been teaching for almost 20 years. I can do that in my sleep. Like, someone can ask one question and it's like, I can do a 2-hour seminar off that one question. That's easy to do. But
I think from a white belt perspective, from my perspective, having that curriculum on paper helps a lot, you know, because I remember when when I used to go to your gym, when you gave me those sheets of paper, those like different chapters, it's nice to be able to reflect off of those, and you can go back, and if you didn't remember something, or you're not one of those guys who writes it down in their journal or something like that. You know, a lot of the guys, you know, I've heard of the gym say, you know, bring a journal, write it down, you know, but it's nice to have it like when your coach hands you that, because then you can go back and go, shit, what did we learn last week? And then be able to look it up on your own time, you know, and be able to watch videos and stuff like that. And it really helps out a lot, you know?
Yeah. Cause when we got to that level to where we were like, we're going to do a curriculum, first of all, Mike Fowler, that made me feel really good. Cause we were talking with him after his seminar, and one of my guys asked him, like, what do you think is the most important thing for a school to have? And he goes, the number one thing is when they come in, that you have a piece of paper that shows them what they're going to be learning. That's the number one thing. And we had already had that. And so we were like, okay, we're on the right track. The second thing was, I looked at it from when I started. Like I said, I was information whore. And it's like, so I was kind of like, what would I have wanted when I started? And that was it. I studied all the time at home. And so we wanted to give our students an avenue to where they could study and do more at home when they couldn't be at class all the time. And so,
so take me back to, you said you were working at Walmart night shift, or, you know, whatever you're doing. And when did you start getting into MMA, like yourself? Like when you started fighting, like when did you start training? So I never wanted to fight. The only reason I fought was because I didn't want to be one of those coaches that was telling guys to suck it up and stuff. And I'd never been in that situation. So I started the gym when I was 28. We were in King City for, I think, 9 months. And then I was living in St. Joe, and then we found a place in St. Joe and moved it there. And within 2 years, we had a huge team, really, really good fighters. And so I think it was 2006 is when I had my first fight. Oh, really?
Yeah.
How old were you?
I was close to 30, I think.
Really?
Yeah. So,
which from what I hear is not unheard of. Actually, I rolled with a guy like a month back, and I think he told me his first amateur fight, he was 32.
Yeah.
So I was like, I thought 30s, I thought you're done. I mean, it's over.
Well, again, back then we just really didn't have the opportunity. Like when I was at Earl's, I trained for a pancration fight, but that was going to be in Texas. Like you had to go to Texas to fight a pancration. It wasn't even a real MMA fight.
What is pancration?
That's just it's like basically MMA, but with open palms. And sometimes the rules are different. Like sometimes it's like actual pancration in Japan it was like kickboxing on the feet. So like if you knock somebody down with a punch, they gotta standing 8 count.
Okay.
But then if you went to the ground, you could still do submission. So it was basically MMA, just different rule set, open hand slapping to the face, and then you could punch with a fist to the body because you didn't wear any gloves.
Anytime I think of open hand, I think of Bossroot.
Yeah,
just beating the shit out of people.
But and that's what that was in Pancration. That's when he did all that open hand.
Oh, was that?
Yeah,
yeah.
That's.
And he did it because he didn't want to break his hands, right? You know, a lot of people think your fist is strong, but it's actually not.
Yeah, but
pretty brittle.
But like the rule set, you couldn't have a closed fist when you attack the head. You could.
Oh, okay. So he specifically did. Okay.
Gotcha. He had to do it in Pancration for the rule set, and so one of the things he was doing different he would tighten his hand up like that and like still throw it straight, and so his wrist was behind that part, and he was breaking a lot of people's noses, and then he was known for the liver shot too. So when you punch to the body, you can make a fist, and so he had a bare fist punch into people's livers, and so he dropped a lot of guys in Pancration with liver shots.
Damn, that's crazy. So you started at 30. That was your first fight, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was.
So
30.
you had already opened your gym
Yep.
at that time, and then you took it. So you started training, took your fight. So when did you start training? Like, how old were you when you started training?
So when I started at Earl's, I was 20.
Okay.
Trained for.
So you've been training for a while.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, like I said, October Lone Wolf will turn 20 years old.
Right.
And we'll be 10 years of 10th Planet.
Yeah, but from you first started training at 20 to your fight at 30, I mean, you'd already had 10 years. So
yeah, which there was 4 years where I didn't hardly do anything.
Right.
I gained a ton of weight. And so like and I was a personal trainer when I was going out to Earl's too. So I was doing that. And like I said, I hit about 22, 23, started kind of like not going as much to Earl's. My rhythm broke. Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah. Just being a kid too.
For sure.
And so like there was about a 4-year span where I didn't train. I was always studying MMA, always watching the fight. I think I watched every single UFC up until like 144 was the first one that I didn't watch. So I was always studying, and then like I said, I got those VHS series and watched that all the time. I was getting Frank Shamrock's VHSs, you know, anything I could get my hands on, and started my gym when I was 28. Like I said, it already had fighters fight before I fought, and then just hopped in there. It was crazy. I popped my patella out like a month and a half before I had my first fight, which is nuts to me because like there's no way I would let my fighter, and it's crazy because I couldn't walk for 3 days, and then somehow I just healed up. And so even though I was 30, like you're still young at 30. Yeah. And I fought a month and a half later and fought like 4 more times within 10 months.
Right.
So it's like once I got on that roller coaster, it was just like, okay, I guess we're doing the next one. We're doing the next one. And was
it more of like an addiction? Like you like the feeling?
Not really. It was more like a roller coaster. I mean, I didn't like fighting. That's what, like when people ask me why I don't compete, it's just I don't like the type of person I am when I compete. Like,
got you.
Like to really do what I perform the way I should perform. Like I kind of need that spark of anger, like not anger, but like
a dark mentality type.
Yeah, something like needs to set me out. Like how Michael Jordan always would, like, you know, they said sometimes he would make up stuff and like be pissed at somebody, and then they were like, I didn't do nothing to you. And he's like, I know, I just made up my head. Like that was kind of what I would do. Like that was from football. Like like in the football game, I would look for something to set me off, and then I would let it set me off, and then that's what got me. And that's not the type of person I am. And so, and I just didn't have an ego by that time. I was 30. My ego had ran its course through my 20s, and I didn't feel like, I just loved the art, and I just wanted to train people, and I wanted to get better, and I just loved training. And so yeah, once I had that first fight, it's almost like you didn't have a choice. It was like the promoter came to you, you know, you want to fight this fight? Yeah, I guess I'll fight. And the opponent would seem right, and so you would do it. and we were all striving to get titles and stuff back then. And so,
what weight class were you fighting in?
I was basically fighting a heavyweight. Like I was ranked number 3 at 205. My last fight I weighed 217. My opponent weighed 237.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Did they not have like a pound allowance there on that, or is it heavyweight is just whatever?
Oh, no, I was on my way to the weigh-ins and they called me up and said, you're
well, I guess heavyweight you just have to be under 265 or something like that.
We had agreed to weigh between 220 and 215.
Okay.
And it was funny that Monday the promoter called me up and said, hey, he was just asking if you wanted to go ahead and go down to 205. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I was like, as long as we're under 220, I said, I'm fine. There's no reason to cut for no reason. And yeah, I'm glad I didn't do that because weighed in at 237. And
I know. How much is that weight difference? I mean, that's a big deal. A lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah. I mean, he fractured my face from his knees. Yeah. So yeah, it was a big difference, which, it's one of those shots I've seen guys take, way harder shots jumping off their feet and hitting some dude. And it just hit me here. I had a fracture going from this cheekbone all the way to this cheekbone.
Really?
Yeah.
How long did that take to heal from?
Long time. Cause I couldn't feel my front 2 teeth for that was in March, and I didn't feel them until January.
And that was from a punch?
From his knees. Like I had just pulled guard, and I actually was too fast because he reared up the throw, and I swam and went ahead of his punch, and then his punch came, and it just hit me, and it was just a flash knockout. I was just out for a split second. Luckily, the ref stopped it. But yeah, I thought my teeth were gone. I asked the ref if my teeth were knocked out.
So you immediately couldn't feel anything.
Yeah. Like, I couldn't feel my teeth. He knocked my mouthpiece through my lip. Oh, so like shit. the old shock doctors that had that plastic part went through my lip right here. So they had to give me stitches on the outside and the inside. Oh, damn. Yeah, and then I had to corner a fight after. I had to corner Roy. He was fighting for a title too that night.
That same night? And
I had to corner him. And so I made his wife at the time go in the first round, and she's like, I can't do that. And so I had a towel over my lip because it was bleeding still because I hadn't got it stitched up. And the bad thing was it had fractured. The part that actually they thought about doing surgery on was that little lip of your nose that goes up. That was kind of shattered. And so every time I'd open my mouth a little too wide, it would click. And I kept asking the doctor, like, is it broke? And he's like, no, you're fine. But yeah, so it was horrible. Like I couldn't yell hardly because if I opened up like that, it would click. And it was a horrible feeling. But yeah, the second round I had to go in there, and he broke his arm in that fight. He fought Rodney Borden, which if you've been around MMA for a while, everybody knows him. Super awesome dude. Probably one of the toughest dudes that ever fought Kansas City. But Roy threw, I think like 8 spinning back fists, and one of them broke his arm. And so, yeah, we both had to go to the emergency room that night. And yeah, he had a cast on his arm, and yeah, my face was fractured. And
you were done after that. You're like, fuck this.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't intentionally done. It's just like, man, it just took so long to heal up. And then about the time it healed up, and I'd gotten married and stuff, after that. And
how old were you on your last fight?
I was either 30 on my last fight or 31. I can't remember.
Oh, so you had a bunch of fights.
Yeah, like I said, I fought 5 times is all I fought. But I fought 5 times within 10 months. Holy shit. My first fight was in August. My last fight was in March.
That's crazy. Man.
Yeah, so we were going.
Is that even a good thing to do? I mean, or was that just a thing back then?
It wasn't bad because...
Like nowadays, would you have one of your fighters do that?
I mean... Yeah, I mean, if he was training all the time like we were, yeah, I mean, it was the best way to do it.
Right.
Because as long as you didn't get hurt in your fight, like, you just went right back to training. You were still in shape. Your weight was still down.
Yeah, I'm kind of just going off of, I guess, the UFC guys taking 2 fights a year. But, of course, that's completely different, I guess, than
and if you listen to a lot of those guys will do that. I mean, you're starting to see that, just like that's what made Hamzat so popular. Like he fought 3 times in a month, like, because those guys are already in shape. And then, you know, even when you go through a minute fight, you know, or 2-minute fight, like, your body still rebounds after that because you're going 100%. Your body just went 100%, and now it rebounds from that. So 2 weeks after the fight, you're almost in better shape than you were before you fought. And so it's like, if you can fight again and keep that going, your body's just getting conditioned more and more to do that. You just got to, as long as you don't have a super hard weight cut, that's the only difference now is guys are cutting a lot more weight. But like, I remember when Affliction started, I remember Tim Silva, he was like, he goes, I'd love to fight every 6 weeks. Like, why? I don't want to get fat and relax and stop training. Like, if I don't get hurt, I just go right to the next one.
What advice would you give for, I'll put myself out there. You know, I've talked to James about this. I've talked to a lot of people about this. I've always wanted to just take one fight, man, you know, and just to get the feeling of, you know, walking in that cage. I've seen a lot of guys do it. You know, I've always wanted to try it myself. I'm not naive to think I'm going to be some type of UFC fighter. I know that's not going to happen, not at 30. But what advice would you give for them if they wanted to do that? Especially with, you know, I don't have a background in any type of martial arts other than the small amount of jiu-jitsu I've been doing, you know. Is that something feasible? Is that something possible?
Or? I mean, it's, is it nice.
Recommended?
we have amateur now. Yeah. I mean, it's safe for the most part. I mean, you're taking a risk, but I mean, you're taking a risk when you play basketball and stuff. Like
what kind of camp would you recommend? Like 8-week, 12-week?
To me, it's not about the camp. It's about taking the time to make sure that you know what you're doing in every aspect.
Right.
A big thing that, like, a lot of people, even in the sport, don't really pay attention to is wall work and how much different the wall is. Like, everybody always says it's, you know, striking, clinch, and ground. And to me, the wall is a fourth entity. Like, wrestling off the wall is different than wrestling out in the open. Striking off the wall is different than striking out in the open. And then there's just a lot of tactics and stuff that you got to know, or you're not totally prepared. So, like, with us, like, we focus on jiu-jitsu so they have that base, because if something bad happens, that's where they're going to end up. And then from there, and then we kind of do stand-up secondary. We demand more of our students if they want to do stand-up. We have a very extensive test they have to take to be eligible for our advanced stand-up class. So we've really slowed it down, which hurts our numbers. Like, you know, we would have a lot more people in advanced class if we would just start letting them spar right off the bat, and, you know, kind of like you do when you roll in jiu-jitsu.
Is that something new that you've been incorporating?
No, we've been doing it for quite a while. We actually, when we had 2 schools going still, we actually forced them to start in jiu-jitsu, and they had to earn their way before they could even start stand-up.
Right.
But now we have fundamental stand-up classes, and then they move on to pads classes where they actually start hitting stuff and getting their striking skills good. And then mainly just our terminology and our tactics are what they have to test over, so they know it. Because we used to only have a half an hour advanced stand-up class. Now we have an hour. And so, but when we had a half an hour, we didn't have time to, like, teach you, oh, this is what this means. Like, we were just go. So
you have another stand-up class. I remember taking a couple of your classes. It wasn't advanced. It was just a normal stand-up class. You still have that, right?
Yeah, that's what we call our fundamentals. Yeah, we just started letting people wear pads in it. So I
don't remember you having pads.
Yeah, we used to have it to where it was open palm, just so they would learn the correct defense, and it helped them learn to throw punches in control and pull them back and
defend too.
That was
a lot of people overlook that.
Yeah, that was the main thing was just to get their defense right and to get them used to grabbing stuff. You know, because that's another part, I think, because we got into that for a while where we just basically sparred with I used to make my guys wear 18-ounce Muay Thai gloves, and I felt like they were missing a lot of the grabbing and the hand trapping and all that stuff, which should be part of your striking too.
Right.
So,
right. That's pretty cool. And I've heard you say, when you talk about the wall work, you kind of look at it as like jiu-jitsu on the wall. I've heard you talk about that.
Yeah. I usually use the term vertical jiu-jitsu a lot because a lot of the principles are the same. Like, you don't want your back flat on the mat. You don't want your back flat against the wall.
Right.
Cause that's when you're going to get taken down. Your whizzer, your sweeps, a lot of that stuff are principally the same as jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So
that whizzer comes in handy.
Yeah.
I've been incorporating that a lot, man. That thing comes in handy. At first, when you're training, you're like, what the hell? This doesn't make any sense. But when you start giving a good umph into it, man, I mean, it definitely comes in handy. But the reason why I was asking you, though, about the kind of taking it slow now is I've noticed, and maybe I'm wrong on this, so tell me if I am, ever since that incident happened with that guy that got hurt and sued that gym, I feel like every gym's kind of been on high alert now and kind of relaxing a little bit and not throwing guys out there or letting them do whatever they want, so you've had to be kind of cautious on that.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't, because we've always had a good culture. That's
right.
One thing I'm super happy about. And we've had a lot of people, we get a lot of military guys, we get a lot of 10 Planet guys that visit all the time. And we've been told multiple times, just over Christmas break, like, how unique our culture is and how comfortable they feel. And so we've always grappled hard. My guys are always ready to get down, but I hear so many stories of guys just going in, like even their first class, and just getting knee barred and stuff, and they don't know what it is, and getting their knee popped and stuff. And it's just like,
kind of turns them off.
My guys, like when you start rolling, you're always going to start rolling with a higher belt at our gym, and that higher belt's not going to have an ego to look to hurt you. Like, he's going to be helping you the whole time and guiding you through and pointing you out. And it's like, so when you start building that culture, like, you can go hard, but you can trust that the guy is not going to take it past the point that he's going to take it. And I feel like, and for one, I don't feel like, that guy, that was purely an accidental thing. Like, I mean, that whole lawsuit is a thing in itself, but I also feel that there's also a lot of toxic ego style gyms out there that are very cult like and like, like Tom DeBlas is doing a good job of exposing a lot of that stuff, like especially even in like the traditional martial arts where they're just beating their students up or beating a white belt up or a blue belt up for fun.
Who is that? Does he have a YouTube channel or something?
Yeah. Tom DeBlas, like,
okay. I don't think I've seen him. He's pretty. He's been Warrior Academy's had him down for seminars. He's part of the Donahue, Henzo Gracie lineage around there. Like Gary Tonin started with him, and but yeah, he does a lot of stuff on Instagram now. Like, maybe I have seen him.
I'm sure you have.
If I've seen a picture of him, I'd probably.
He's pretty popular on Instagram now. Yeah. He's usually the first thing that pops up on my Instagram every day. But yeah, he does a lot of showing like street fights and exposing a lot of gyms for being bullies, and like he's helping a lot of kids that are being bullied at school with because it's becoming such a popular thing to just even for girls to beat up on other girls and tape it. Just for clout, and so he's exposing a lot of that stuff. So,
you think jiu-jitsu would help if they incorporated that in schools?
Oh yeah, like I said, he's done that. He's so he'll find these videos and he'll ask to get in touch with the parents, and they'll contact him, and then he'll contact a Henzo or something like that.
I've seen Henry Gracie do that too. I think he does some stuff like that.
And then they'll give them free tuition, and then they'll have videos of those kids winning a jiu-jitsu competition. Yeah. It's the best thing for a kid to do. Is
what do you think jiu-jitsu. It is that's stopping these schools from incorporating jiu-jitsu as an actual sports?
Laziness, incompetence, like
not understanding.
Like, I mean, I've said this before. I probably said it on, previous stuff. Like, the zero tolerance policy, I think, is just the worst thing in the world. It's just lazy administrated.
What do you mean by blaming both children for the fight?
Yeah. Like, a kid comes up and pushes you every day and
he can't defend
takes
himself,
your lunch, and then finally you sock him in the face, and then you get in trouble more than he does.
Yeah.
Which is what happens from my experience. I had a kid one time get suspended because and he was an awkward kid at the time, and kid was picking on him all the time, and he kicked him in the leg. He was kicking him in the leg, and my kid checked it and dropped him. And they suspended him for 3 days and didn't suspend the kid. And it's just like, all you're doing is empowering the bully. The bully doesn't care. Even if you did suspend that kid, he doesn't care because you got in trouble too. So he bullied you and got you suspended.
Yeah. And also, you don't know how that kid's home is. He may have parents that don't like fighting at all, or, that they may be upset because he's suspended now. And now next time he gets bullied, he's going to think about, should I even defend myself, or should I have to? The
good kids don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, that's
and it's like, so if they finally do something, which is what they should do, they should stand up for themselves. Like, you preach all this BS about self-worth and all this stuff, but then that's actual self-worth when you don't want to fight anybody, but they pushed you to a point to where I've got to have some self-worth, self-respect for myself. And so you push back and then you get in trouble for it. Like, what kind of message does that send?
Yeah, man.
And which to me, it's by design, like, cause they want you to go to authority figure, and that way you just, you're beholden for someone else to take care of your problems. It's just a horrible way.
And then you grow up thinking that those authority figures are going to be there to protect you all the time, and they can't realistically. Your first line of defense is going to be yourself, and we're losing that. We're getting that taken away when we're younger, saying, "Oh no, don't defend yourself. Just wait for us to deal with it." It's like, well, that's not real. When they get out of school and they go into the real world, that's not something that's real. I preach that to my daughter all the time, and it kind of saddens me because she's even, she's had, throughout the years, she's 13 now, to where she's has incidences where girls can be mean.
Oh,
man,
yeah. Yeah.
So, and especially with how, social media is very, big, with these kids. And, I've tried to tell her, stand up for yourself. I'm not the type to where I grew up, I was always told, wait until you get hit. No, like I don't tell my kids that, man. Like, literally, if you feel that person's in your space, that person's messing with you, they're making your life a living hell, stand up for yourself. Because I can tell you what, if you hit that person in the face, they will leave you alone, But, then again, it sucks because she's scared that she's going to get, suspended. And she doesn't want to get suspended from school. She likes school. She doesn't want to be, have to stay at home for 3 days or whatever. So it kind of puts you in a weird position as a parent. It's like you want to have them stand up for themselves, but then you have the school kind of keeping them down, like not.
Yeah, and that's why, that's what I always tell to our parents, especially coming in, especially when they don't know anything about jiu-jitsu. It's like, like at least with jiu-jitsu, you can take them down, control them without throwing a punch,
right? And
then wait for the teacher to get there, and then be hands free. So then your chances of your kid getting in trouble are less, of them accidentally hurting the kid, like, where you're, having them in Kempo or karate or something like that, and they're teaching them to karate chop them in the throat. Like, what's going to get them in more trouble with that, or mounting them and, getting a gift wrap and then just holding them there until the teacher comes, because then, that'll make a kid feel more humiliated than anything.
That's what I was getting ready to say.
Because, you see that with adults too, like, especially in the early fights, like I'd see kids that would, get beat up, but they would still walk around with their shirts on, their gloves on. And because that's all they wanted. They just wanted to have the clout of being in a fight and being an MMA fighter. Right. And it's just like, you punch, a kid gets punched and gets a black eye. Well, then everybody thinks he's tough and, lived life and, and it's just like you take them down and control them and, you know.
Yeah, I think everybody should experience that, though, man. I mean, don't you? I feel like if you've never been in any type of physical altercation, you kind of don't understand really.
You don't understand. You don't understand life.
Yeah,
because, and I don't want to sound like some bro alpha male, because I was never in a street fight. I still haven't. I've been in one altercation, and that was just me grabbing a kid off the pile and rear naked choke him and accidentally knocking him unconscious, and that ended the fight. That's the only altercation I've ever had. Like, I've never been in a street fight. I've never looked for a street fight. You know, my first fight was in a cage, you know. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm like, yeah, you should, you know, stand, like, someone steps up, you should stalk them. Like, no, I don't. I'm the most anti-violence guy you'll meet. Like, I'm always will take, but at the same time, like, I've been in the world of violence for, you know, most of my adult life, like in one aspect. And sports is, you know, if you played football, especially, that's violence. Like, you know, you're learning what someone imposing pain on you, and you having to deal with that. And I think that's a lot of what's wrong with our society. We have so many, especially adult males, that they don't hunt. Like, that's the other thing. You hunt, like, you've killed something. Like, you've watched something die and caused something to die. Like, that's nature. Like, you know, nature is violent and ugly, and like, you know, like I said, we romanticize nature. You know, you see these videos with bears and tigers, they're all best friends and stuff. It's like, that's like a 1 in a trillion shot. That's a lottery hit 5 times. Like, that doesn't happen in nature. Those things and it's brutal. Like, animals are brutal to each other, you know. And so if you don't experience that as a human, you're missing a big chunk of life. You know, like, I kind of call it the 97% rule. When we talk about it with our students, it's like, people that haven't hunted, they haven't had any experience with violence, whether taking martial arts or something, and then haven't played sports, especially like, you know, football or basketball or something. I wouldn't really count baseball, but there is some impact there every now and then.
Working with the team, I guess.
But if they haven't experienced that, they haven't, like, you know, like you as a white belt even, like, so 97% of the time, 97% of the places you go, you could manhandle 97% of the people in that place. So if you go to a Walmart, say there's 200 people in there, there's probably not, maybe 3% of the people that would have a chance of beating you.
Right.
And even those, you'd be a tough fight. Like, and so, like, imagine, you probably never thought about that. I didn't think about that for a long time. You start getting older, you start thinking about dumb stuff like this, but it's like, but we experience that whether we know it or not. Like, you know, so imagine
it is a confidence builder, though. It is. Like,
I mean, it's a total paradigm shift in your way of thinking. So now, if you're not that person, you know, you've grappled before, you sparred before, like, now imagine not being that person. And now everywhere you go, you couldn't say that. You couldn't even imagine that. And so how does that make you how much of a different person does that make you? Does that make you a more calm person, a more confident person? No. Does that make you ready when something goes off? If you have any kind of confrontation, do you feel like you could handle it?
I think it makes you feel more delusional, as if you know how many guys that they've maybe gotten into some street fights, but have never gone into a gym and actually, you know, went with somebody who actually has experience, even a year or two, you know, experience. And I don't think they understand, you know, that whole, oh, when I get mad, I see red and it's over. You know, I've heard that so many times from these guys, dude. And I'm just like,
well, it's all about your attitude.
Yeah. So to me, it's like a majority of these people who don't do it I think they're so delusional, especially the older you get. it's like you still think you can do what you did in your 20s. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, you haven't done shit but work and go home and sit on the couch and drink beer for the last 10 years. You know what I mean?
And most people haven't had an adrenaline rush. Like, everybody that's fight, they know what an adrenaline dump feels like, and it's horrible.
My first competition, man. Oh,
yeah.
Dude.
And it's like, so it's like, if you've never experienced that before, and now it's life or death, and
that was only a grappling, that was just jiu-jitsu. I couldn't imagine
MMA,
a first MMA match.
MMA, it's way worse. Yeah. But yeah, it's just like, so they get into a confrontation, even if it's just a shouting match, their adrenaline spikes up, and they you feel like throwing up, and like, and so it's like, they're not even come close to preparing.
And cardio, dude. Cardio with that with that freaking adrenaline dump. Oh man.
Yeah, we're not even talking about the actual physical nature of it. Like, we're just talking about the mental. Like, are you prepared to just have to all of a sudden someone step up to you and start yelling at you? Like, most people can't even handle that. And it's like, to me, that's what's wrong with our society right now. We have too many. We're being led too much by weak people that don't understand. Cause like, like the guys in martial arts, most of them, they're the last dudes. Like, if there was even a hint that there was going to be trouble at a bar or something, they're leaving. Like, they're not going, oh, I'm going to step up and handle this. Like, they don't want any part of that. They understand that. Yeah. They understand. And that's what I mean by experience. Like, those guys know that world. Like, they're not delusional. They're not thinking, they're not going, what if? They're not looking at a movie and go, yeah, I want to experience that, and I'm going to do it if somebody says the wrong thing. Like, no. And you now we have so much video footage of, and the same thing with cops too.
Oh yeah.
There's cops going out there that don't experience that. Like, that's, you want to talk about schools. Like, how is not every cop out there right now forced to do jiu-jitsu twice a week at least?
And what's crazy, a lot of them offer discounts for law enforcement, military, and yet I don't think I've met a cop at a gym yet. And that's crazy to me, especially with what they have to deal with out there, man. I mean, I think it would stop a lot of, maybe shootings that didn't have to happen, or, them getting beat up, like how many of these times we've seen these guys they're trying to arrest, it takes them like 5 minutes to even try to get handcuffs on them.
Yeah, there's that video of the 4 female cops. Like, they have one guy and he's barely fighting them and getting out of there. And I don't understand from the cops' perspective, like, dude, like, you've been out there, you've seen stuff go down. Like, this is your life you're talking about. Like, you're going to come up against somebody that doesn't care. And I've had some of my old guys that fought, they've had women attack them, and like, they've had battles with them, and just, it's like,
going crazy. It'd be hard to, grab onto her, you know what I mean? Depending on how big she is.
And it doesn't matter how good you were, if you're not trained on a regular basis, like, especially when you're going months without training, you're going to lose it. And I know that firsthand. Like, I know my guys that have gotten the situations, and they're just like, I'm like, all you had to do was this, that. Yeah. Just wasn't there.
Or even me, like, how long I took off. I think I only trained with you guys maybe half a year. And from the amount of time, I think I took like 4 years off. I didn't remember shit. Like, I remembered how to roll, you know what I mean? Like, kind of have that, feel for it. But I didn't remember. I think I was getting people with the punch choke. That was it. Like, that's all I think I remembered, dude, And but yeah, you're right. I mean, even a couple months off, I think what it is, honestly, man, is they put it on the cops to go out there and do it, when really whoever's running their police academies and, the head guys at those departments, they should be incorporating that into their training. You know what I mean? And I don't know if they are. Maybe they are nowadays. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It was. I mean, there was a study out in Georgia where they did that. They took a program, and it was insane. Like, it was stuff. It was measurements that they never even thought of. Like, like, of course, like we talked about, like lawsuits went down, shootings went down,
Mm-hmm.
but then there was stuff like the cops, the perps injuries were less. The cops injuries, even outside of their duty, became less. They had because they were in better shape and their body was conditioned better. And so just and they proved budget wise that it saves, your county or city a whole bunch of money if your cops are doing jiu-jitsu. And it'll get there. It's just the main problem we have now. There's just a shortage of cops. So these cops they don't have time to train.
Yeah, but why is there a shortage of cops? Because they haven't. I feel like the training, and Jocko Willings talked about it. Tim Kennedy's talked about it. They're giving these guys a year in the police academy, and then sending them out to shadow somebody, and off to the streets you go.
But they almost have to, because the shortage of cops to me is coming from a lot of different other reasons. And that definitely needs. And again, that's the weak leading, and you have bad leaders and that's what I think is a problem with their society, is we've gotten to a point where our leaders aren't true leaders anymore. Right. And so our youth and people coming up don't even have an idea of what actual leadership is. They don't really see true leadership, and I think that's just trickling down into all aspects of society. Because
I wonder if we've ever had really true leadership, because if you think about it, I feel like with government, it's always kind of been smoke and mirrors. I think once you get, that old saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think that we've been seeing that for a long time throughout history. And the guys that are leaders, like the Tim Kennedys, Jockos, guys like that are making a big difference, they don't want to run for that shit. They don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah, and that goes back to, that's kind of like the double-edged sword, is just like we were talking about with people that have experience in violence. They're not out looking for trouble. They're not out looking for violence. And the weak are. That's one thing with COVID. COVID really exposed that. How all these people would get upset over you not having a mask or something like that. And it was because the weak that normally couldn't tell people what to do could tell people what to do now. And there was nothing you could do about it. You had to just sit there and take it until, later on when you were proven right. But now those people don't apologize. They got away with it, and so.
Or they act like as if they didn't, they just put it away, as if it never happened, even though everything
it wasn't our fault. Yeah. We just got bad information. That's what we were told. And it's you still abuse your power and talk like everybody else was evil. And
what's scary is the next one that comes, because there's going to be a next one. It may not be a virus. It may be something else, but call me a conspiracy theorist. But
it's going
that was a pretty good test.
It was. It really showed how people's critical thinking just totally went away.
Dude, I had people who were before that, I thought were independent thinkers, tough guys. And I seen them freaking out. I'm like, what the hell, dude? Telling people you need to get vaccinated, you need to put a mask on, all this shit. I'm just like, dude, it changed. I couldn't believe how many people it changed, man, and how many families it split up, and how many people fought over it, dude. It's insane, man.
Yeah, it was definitely an eye opener. Mm-hmm. Hopefully it taught a lot of lessons to people, but
we can have conflicting views. I'm sure me and you have conflicting views. Yet me and you can sit here and talk fine with each other, because I respect you. I'm sure you respect me. We're not always going to agree, but that shouldn't make two individuals not, talk to each other. You know what I mean? I guess you could. I mean, if you don't want to talk to somebody, it's better than fighting with them. But I think you're losing out on a lot of great things that individual would have, that can give.
Yeah, and that's like I said, that's the double-edged sword. Is the strong don't, a true strong leader doesn't really care if he's right to you or not. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, chirp all you want. I'm going to go over here and do my own thing. Just leave me alone.
Yeah, it's your life.
That's usually the way the strong feel, is leave me alone. Don't try to make me do anything. Yeah. You can chew me down. I'll take it. That's what the strong does. The weak doesn't want to debate. They don't want you to talk a lot of times. Like, that's what's crazy is just the amount of censorship, the amount of lack of debate, the lack of freedom of speech. Like, that's all weakness. Like, why are you afraid of what someone says? Like, a strong person's not afraid of what anybody says. Like, you know, and so, like I said, that was a real shining example of us being led by the weak. And now, and the strong, you know, they were, you know, when you're printing articles every time someone dies, didn't do what you wanted, and then you boast about it, like, that's evil. And it's like, oh yeah. And now maybe when you have examples of the shoes on the other foot, you don't hear the strong going, yeah, look at that, look at, you guys were wrong. Like, you know, and it's just,
yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy where we're going. I mean, I tend to feel the majority are pretty independent thinkers, and they don't want to tell people what to do or keep people from being able to voice their opinions. I just think the minority of those people that are on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, those are the ones somehow making a huge impact. And I don't understand, how are they getting this power, you know, over people? I mean, do you feel like that? I mean, I feel like out in the streets when I'm talking to people, I don't have people, you know, that we're just having regular conversations. It's a normal conversation. I've had guys disagree with things I've said, you know, and it's not like we fight, you know what I mean? Or we may not talk, you know what I mean? Again, you know, but it was nothing like, it was just, we didn't have anything in common. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
You do you, I do me. You know?
Yeah. Like you said, it's just, you know, like we all hear the example of like, oh, you were bullied as a kid, and so you became a cop, and now everybody knows that example, and that's what basically is happening with the rest of society. It's just, again, it's just like going back to what we talked about, experience with violence. Like, your experience with violence, and we're just using the word violence as like, you know, impact, aggressiveness, confrontation. Like, your experience with that's true power. You know, that's real power. You're dealing with actual power dynamics. And so if you've had a person that's never experienced having power, that's how you get bullies. That's how you get dictatorships. Like, you know, the difference, there is no difference between a victim and a bully. The only difference is the bully has some sense of power, whether it's real or illusionary. They have some sense of power over the victim. That's why they're the bully. That's why, you know, you hear the old, you know, adage where, oh, you know, you sock a bully in the mouth and now he backs down. Yeah, because you've exerted power over him that he doesn't have experience. Most bullies aren't in a fight, and if they are in a fight, it's not in a fair fight. Yeah. And so again, it's just an experience with violence and power. Like, if you've never had any power over people, then when you finally get it, or the illusion of it, you're gonna abuse it.
That's everything, man. Balance.
Exactly.
Like you said, not getting lost in that power, because the victim could turn into the bully because he gets lost in that power. Yeah. You know, over that person.
That's what happened. I mean, that's what happened in a lot of cases. In that you had these victims, and now whether they believed in it or not, they were like, this is my chance. This is my chance to exert power over you when I couldn't exert power over you any other time in my life.
Dude, that's the biggest problem, man, though, is balance and everything. Because if you think about it, it's balance in diet, balance in physical activity, balance in work, balance in family. Everything's balance. And it's so hard to find that, you know what I mean? Like, to find that fine balance for everything. Because I always tell everyone, everything is good in moderation. You know, you have to have some type of moderation, because if you overindulge in something, even working out, you can't work out 7 days a week, 2 times a day. It's not going to be good for you. You know what I mean? The same way you shouldn't be eating McDonald's 7 days a week, 3 times a day, you know. And I think it's just hard for people to find that balance, and a lot of them don't want to, you know, a lot of them don't care. You know, that's sad, man. You know, that's real sad.
Yeah. And I think, again, I see this with kids. From like when I grew up, you know, these kids are just, they aren't made to do anything, you know. And like I wasn't made to do anything. My parents were, you know, they pretty much let me do what I want, but it's like we still, it was rare that someone my age didn't play the sport that was available to them. We didn't have very many sports compared to what kids have now, but it's like we never quit a sport. Like it was a big deal if somebody in my class quit a sport or didn't play a sport, you know. And it's just like now kids, I've had so many kids that were super talented, and I would tell their parents how talented they were, and it would be time for them to sign back up, and they'd be like, "Oh, you want to do this?" "Nah, I want to do something else." "Well, what do you want to do?" "You're not just going to play video games." But then they would still quit, and I would never see them play any sports. And it's just like,
that's the problem. Parents are giving choices to the kids.
Yeah,
you should be saying, "Hey," like I tell my kids, I don't care what you do, but you're doing something. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like whatever sport, because I would love for them to do jiu-jitsu, but my daughter has tried it. She didn't really take to it very well. Yeah. I don't want to push her into it because I'm hoping when she gets older, she may come back to it. Especially another big thing too is what I tell other fathers: you be the example. You go out there and do something. If they see you just come home and sit on the couch all day, what do you think that, especially from a male's perspective, like, do you think when he gets older, he's going to continue to do something? Or is he just going to think, well, I work and I just come home and I'll have a beer and watch TV and that's it? It's like, well, that's not cool, man. You know, get involved with your kids, man. If your kid's in basketball, maybe coach or help out, you know, do something. There's always, you know, they're always needing help, you know what I mean? Or go out there and learn with them. You know, you're never too old to learn. You know?
Yeah. And I mean, that's just like you know, you don't hear about parents playing. Like my family, my dad helped coach our softball team, and he played softball and sports. And then, like I said, both my grandparents were farmers. My dad, both my parents are hard workers, and it's like, so just by example, like you were a hard worker. Like I was called lazy a lot when I was a kid, and like, you know, I worked way harder than most kids work now. and I didn't really think that I was a hard worker back then, but you know, because that's just what you did. And now kids don't hardly do anything, and their parents don't hardly do anything. And like you said, that's the world that they're seeing. They're going to, you know, like I never wanted to be a lazy person. Like that would really piss me off if somebody, you know, called me lazy or insinuated that I was lazy. Like that was a prideful thing. And like kids don't care anymore. They'll gladly be called lazy to go play video games or whatever. And it's just, we're just losing a lot of the stuff that we had. And you're seeing that with sports, which I totally understand. Like, I don't know if I'd let my kid play football if I had a kid, you know, just experience what I experienced. I had a lot of concussions and a lot of problems. And that's why I'm glad I didn't, you know, make it go at college, because I can't imagine if I'd still be alive getting those impacts. But I understand that part of it. But at the same time, you know, like we're just not training our kids to go through that struggle of life. And so they're not dealing with those power dynamics. And so they're, like you said, they're becoming insecure people that don't know how to deal with power. And so who knows what they're going to be like when they actually either get a piece of power or somebody tries to impose power on them. Are they going to cave? Or, you know, are they going to become a dictator? Or are they going to become a bully? And it's not a healthy way to live.
Yeah, and it's not just an instant. Like your kid played sports in high school, so he's going to be a great person the rest of his life. I think it's a continued journey throughout life. I don't think it ever stops. Learning, like keeping that humbleness, like, you know, keep, you know, humbling yourself, learning. So I don't think you can just put your kid in sports and football and then, or soccer or whatever, and they play throughout high school. And then after high school, it's just like, oh, well, they're going to be a good person. Like, no, man, like they still need to, you know, when they get older, do something else. You know what I mean? I mean, look at a lot of these adults right now. You know, a lot of them are lost, you know, because all they have is work. Like, that's it. Work. You come home, you're on your phone for like 2 hours, 3 hours, all night. You know, that's all you do, you know. And don't get me wrong, I understand in today's world, I feel the effects too. Things are getting more expensive. Oh, yeah. These companies are making it to where you only make just enough to get by. You know, it's, you know, especially with, you know, how far the wage gap and economy is right now. It's so imbalanced. So I get it. A lot of parents are having to work overtime and they're not able to be there to take their kids to these sports and stuff like that. But I feel like there's still enough time in the day to do something, man. Like, even if you can't, even if you're at like to where your job is so demanding, there's nothing, you can't take your kid to come home and play some type of sport. You know, go take them to a park and shoot hoops, or take them to a park and like down the street, there's like Happy Rock Park, you know, there's soccer goals out there. Take them out there. You know, you can do things on yourself. We fall into this mentality, and we do the same thing with school where we have to drop our kids off and you do it. Yeah. It's like, nah, man, like you're just like I say, like in scenarios, you're the first line of defense. Well, as parents, we're also the first line of educating our children and bringing them up. And I think we're failing to see that. We're wanting other people to do it because we can just pay and drop them off. And I have nothing against schools. Like, well, I have things against them, but I have a lot of things I wish they would change. But I get that it's needed, especially in today's world. You know, I mean, we're all working. You know, like we need a spot. You know, we can't be with our children all the time, even though we wish we could. But and, you know, these educators, you know, they're not all bad. You know, but we shouldn't rely on just, you know, your son or daughter's 5th grade teacher to teach them everything in life, because that's not their job. You know what I mean? That's your job. You know, you should be the first line of that. But I don't know, man. We're losing that. You know?
Yeah, and it's like you said, I feel like our society's become too self-absorbed. Mm-hmm. I said
distracted.
I told my guys this a long time ago that I saw jiu-jitsu starting to turn into what I experienced at MMA, because we kind of went away from MMA for a while, just because it was getting pretty toxic. You know, you'd have guys that weren't becoming martial artists. They were, you know, oh, there's a fight coming up. I'll come in and train for 3 or 4 weeks and fight, and then I won't show up for 2 or 3 weeks after that and take a break.
Why was that?
Just because it was a fad. It was like everybody wanted to be an MMA fighter, and you know. Especially before we came to 10th Planet, they didn't have a chance to get belts, earn belts. There was hardly no jiu-jitsu tournaments. So it's like if you loved MMA and you were excited about it, that was the only competition there was to do MMA. And so, you know, and being an MMA fighter is way different than being because I mean, it's no big deal for someone to do a jiu-jitsu competition this week and then turn around and do it next Saturday. Yep. MMA fight's not that way. It consumes your whole life. Like every thought that you have almost of every single moment of your day for almost, you know, 2 months, 6 weeks is about that fight. It's about your weight. It's about what you're eating. It's about when you're training. And it's like, you literally have to push all of life out of the way. And if you can't, like it, you know, that's a big stressor. Yep. And so, you know, it's, like we're jiu-jitsu because of Instagram and stuff like that. Like it was a way for jiu-jitsu people to get attention. You know, and then they came through the era of, all these jiu-jitsu people, all these white belts out there were going to get sponsorships. And that was a big deal. And it was just all clout chasing. And so you started seeing the toxic nature of that we had in MMA start transferring over to jiu-jitsu. And to me now, MMA is getting more towards the martial arts than jiu-jitsu is, because if you want to be an MMA fighter, the competition is so extreme now and so even now that you got to really dedicate yourself and you got to keep going. You can't take 4 weeks, 5 weeks off, you know, after your fight and then, you know.
Yeah, I don't think average fans really understand that, man, when they watch the UFC. Like even me, like I told you, you know, I've always been interested in wanting to do at least one, you know, fight. But I've come to the realization, because after talking with that guy that had his first MMA fight at 32, you know, it did. It got me excited. It's like, oh, well, I'll be 32 this month. And I was like, so it's a possibility. But really sitting down and understanding that, like, oh, dude, you work 12-hour shifts, and like you're going to have to really dedicate yourself probably at least 5 to 6 days a week, you know, for probably 12 weeks or however long, you know, your coach recommends. And, you know, the diet and making weight and family life and all that, it is it's difficult, you know, and it kind of brings you to realization. It's like, oh, dude, they go through a lot more than what you actually think. They don't just go in there and just start throwing blows with each other. You know, there's a whole thing behind it.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just the mental pressure of most people don't do something where their whole life gets consumed by it. You know, that again, that's going back to like you were talking about with parents coming home after work and just not wanting to do anything, and you know, kids get on your phone and leave me alone.
Yep.
Like, so imagine like they can't even handle just having a job and doing a job. Like, man, like I've been doing this for so long. Sometimes I think about where I'm like, you know, cause I had a job most of the time I've owned a school. And, you know, the thought of like working from 7 to 3 and then not having anything to do the rest of the night, I don't know what I would do. Like it would just feel like I was on vacation all the time. And it's just, so it's
that gets old after a while.
Yeah. But it's like, you know, we let ourselves think that like working, you know, 8 hours, 9 hours a day, 5 days a week is like so taxing on our life. And it's just like, imagine, like I said, every thought is going towards that one moment that you're going to have 6 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Like just every meal, everything you eat. Like most people are like looking forward to eating.
Your mindset. No,
you're just like, oh shit, I got to have this at this time. I got to eat now, you know, especially when your metabolism gets rocking. You're like, you know, you're angry, and it's just like you're consumed all the time. And it's like most people don't ever experience that at all. Like,
I had the mental sensei Caleb on, and he was explaining to me even the mindset and getting prepared for that. You know, James even talked about that. That's a big deal, man.
Yeah.
You know, the closer you get to it, the more you realize, like, I'm about to go walk into a cage and punch another man in the face. He's going to punch me back. You know, it's
and not even that. It's you're doing it in front of 1,000 people. Like I remember my second fight, I was supposed to fight a guy and he backed out. Like I was on my way to the fights and he backed out. And this guy had talked a lot of trash and had some incidents with some of my other fighters. And that was the main reason I was fighting him. And not as like revenge, but it was like, oh, you know, you want to pick, I'm at your weight class. Like if you're wanting to show how tough you are, like, let's go. And he was known in the area as like the MMA guy. And so I'm like, good, let's go. We're both same size. And so, he backed out, and they ended up having this guy that was like, his friends told me he weighed 320. But, you know, of course they had to lie and make it 265. And I was weighing about 225 walking around. And I remember going into the cage, and this guy comes out and he's just huge. And I remember thinking, oh crap, my mom's seeing this guy. Oh no. Like I was worried about how worried she was going to be. Cause my first fight, my mom couldn't watch. Like she went up there and someone rubbed her shoulders during the fight. And she has no idea who it was, cause she was so nervous for me.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's weird that like, even in that moment, even though you would think you're worried about this dude is going to kill me, like you're still worried about the crowd and the people in the crowd and them watching you. And and time slows down. Time doesn't behave the same when you're in that cage, and most people don't have a clue what that is like.
And that's the thing, is that you think that would bring peace to the fighter, but it doesn't. Because literally 99% of those people in the stands have never been in that situation. So it should build you up to where like you feel like, okay, yeah, man, I lost, but none of these people are ever going to do this. You know what I mean? But it doesn't. It's like you're still beating yourself up because you lost in front of your family or your friends or your gym. You feel like you let your coach down.
And like most of my good fighters, and I know myself, I was this way, was like, you're thinking you're off of that high of winning, but like every time I won, it was a relief. I was just glad it was over with. I'm glad. And most fighters that I know, that especially my good fighters, they just didn't want to lose. Like they didn't really care about the winning part. Is like they just didn't want to lose. Right. And I know that's the way it was with me. I was just so glad it was over. Like I never was by that time I was never a big partier. Like I wasn't looking forward to drinking. I was just looking forward to eating finally and just relaxing. I feel
like back then though, the drinking was a big thing. I remember going to whiskey tangos and watching fights out there, and the guys would have beers afterwards at the bar.
It was I've seen guys show up at weigh-ins and weigh in and then start drinking a beer. It's like, it was kind of the wild, wild west back then. Yeah. But
those whiskey tango fights were crazy.
Oh man, yeah, that was
those days.
Like I remember when Ken Shamrock showed up for Evanger's fight, and Ken made them not allow smoking, and I was like, oh man, it was so nice. Yeah. But yeah, that place was. I saw so much crazy stuff at that place, and it really was the wild, wild west. It's like. People now they're, at stadiums and everything's nice and clean and produced really well. And the fighters come out and it's just like, I've seen guys, come out in Nike shorts and their cup falls out on the floor and they get disqualified because their cup wouldn't stay in. It's just like, thank God we're not in those days anymore. But
shit, I've seen even, my cousin Joe Estrada, he used to fight. And I remember watching a fight in a parking lot behind OGKC, what they are now. I think they were Impact before that.
Yeah.
They just had a ring in the parking lot.
The carnival, or the fight circus. Is that what it was? Yeah, they had a tent.
It was so long ago, man.
Yeah,
so long ago.
Oh yeah, I've seen. Yeah, I've outdoor fights which was always crazy. I remember. I think Chad Osborne, rest in peace. I think he helped throw it, but that was the heyday. Like people don't realize like COVID kind of hurt it, but like there was a time where there'd be three MMA shows in the Kansas City area on the same weekend. And, I remember they had a show up in St. Joe at the Harley Davidson up there, and we weren't a part of it, but it was like 100 degrees and they were making the fighters wear socks because the vinyl got so hot that it was burning their feet, and like guys were coming out of there with burns on their knees and stuff.
Oh my God, dude.
I never understood why people would have an outdoor MMA fight. It just never made sense to me.
Didn't Josh compete at one? Didn't he do a Harley Davidson?
Yep. Yeah. And even that one, there were storms coming in and they were trying to race people through. And
could you imagine it started raining?
I remember JW threw a fight up in Leavenworth, and it was a good setup. He put a lot of work in it, and then storm came in, and I remember there was literally like water just falling in. I mean, they had a roof canopy, but there was like a gap in between it, and like water was just going right into the cage, and they were trying to dry it off, and they finally just had to cancel it. I think they got, because Witt was supposed to fight on that. He was the main event, and they didn't even make it to his fight, because
So, how did you get into 10th Planet, man? I want to go down that road right now because you started Lone Wolf, all right? You had that going for how long before you started 10th Planet?
So, we started in 2004, and like I said, I was just an information whore, and so I was always searching around. And I remember watching a Pride, and I remember Bass Rutten, which I was a huge follower of Bass Rutten. Yeah. So like the main guys were Frank Shamrock. I was always looking for the next edge. And so Frank Shamrock beat Tito with cardio. And so we all went to him and studied him. And then Couture beat Vitor. That was the first time anybody saw dirty boxing. And so
what is dirty boxing?
Just where you're clinched up and you're not out in the open.
Okay.
And since him being a Greco guy, he was always winning the hand fighting, the underhook battle. And especially us that didn't wrestle, it was like magic. We were like, how did he do that? Like everybody thought Vitor was unstoppable. That was one of the reasons I got the SBG thing, because they had a stand up, a clinch, and a ground VHS in that series, and Randy Couture was on the clinch series. So that was the main reason I got it to begin with. And it was JKD, which I was interested to see how they were going to, meld that in. And
I remember you telling me you used to buy like Boss Rutan video or VHS tapes, and you guys would just start.
Yeah. And then after that, it moved to Boss Rutan, and Boss Rutan used to do the Pride. He used to commentate. And I remember him, someone grabbed their leg and he said, he said something about rubber guard. And he was like, why does Eddie Bravo call it the rubber guard? And so that's where I heard Eddie's name for the first time. And I think Eddie was doing commentating. He was doing the interviews and stuff on some of the Prides, but I don't know if it was that one.
He did some of the UFC too. I remember him talking about.
He worked on the trailer. I don't think he did any interview, but he worked in the trailer. That's why you would always hear Joe Rogan saying,
what does that mean when they said the trailer?
So he's the one that's telling the producers what replays the show. He's telling like Joe Rogan what a move's called, stuff like that. That's why back then you would hear Joe Rogan say Eddie Bravo calls this because Eddie was telling him in his ear. Cool. Yeah. So,
anyway, he probably just started out around then, didn't he, with Eddie Bravo?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he knew Eddie from Jean-Jacques.
Yeah, but so, I mean, like, was he a black belt at that point, or under 10 Planet?
No, he didn't get his black belt I'm not sure when he got it.
Yeah. But it had to have been after around 2010, wouldn't it?
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah. But yeah, so I heard his name, so I started looking it up. Started looking up rubber guard, and then I found him. And again, back then it wasn't, you didn't have YouTube. Like DVDs were just starting to come out. I remember the first time I saw rubber guard being taught I think it was on the mat, and they just had a picture, just a series of picture of Eddie doing it on a dummy, on a grappling dummy. And then I got lucky and found, it was called Spirit. It was a Japanese magazine, and it would come with a DVD. And there was I found one, again, I don't know how I found this information back then, but I found one of those magazines that had Eddie Bravo doing a seminar with Dean Lister. So he was doing the seminar in Japan on Dean Lister. And that was my first, because we were just playing around with it, not knowing what we were doing. And this was in 2005. So 10th Planet was only like a year and a half old when I started following Eddie. And so that was my first experience of actually seeing how to technically do rubber guard, what the purpose of it was, and all that stuff. And so we just started doing stuff.
What makes rubber guard stand out?
Mainly for MMA, just the control. You're able to control them and still strike and not have to worry about getting punched. And that was Eddie's whole deal, was if he got broke enough and he had to do MMA, that's why he was kind of developing his jiu-jitsu to like do it and not get punched.
Right.
And to still have an active attack while he was doing it.
Yeah, because I've heard him talk about half guard too being a horrible position to be in MMA, and that's when the lockdown kind of came in.
Yeah, and that's the one thing, like we talk about, stuff evolving and stuff, and that's the one thing I still don't get, how you see these UFC fighters that get stuck in half guard and they don't even have a regular half guard. They just have their legs open. You're just like, how at this point does every UFC fighter not incorporate lockdown? Like, right. I mean, and there's examples of it. Like the first UFC I saw in person, I think it was UFC 88, when Dan Henderson fought Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva pulled lockdown on that almost the whole fight, and he was working with Scott Epstein, which is Eddie's third or fourth black belt. Einstein, he's the highest degree black belt under Eddie right now. He was training those guys at Black House. And so it's like, you have examples clear back in UFC 88 of, to me, one of the greatest MMA fighters ever doing lockdown against a gold medalist wrestler, and it kept him safe until he could get to a position. And so how all these years later, when we're getting close to UFC 300, and how you're still seeing these UFC fighters that just have, just dog shit half guard, and it doesn't protect them. It doesn't keep them from getting past. It's mind boggling.
And you're still seeing that today.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. You're seeing it in title fights. Like, just guys literally just have their legs open in half guard. And for one, you don't understand why the guy in half guard is not passing. And two, you're just like, how have you gotten to this level? And you are obviously stuck there and you have no half guard and you're just letting this guy elevate and punch on you and pass. And like, how have you not gotten the lockdown in as part of your game to keep you safe?
And you think with how popular Joe Rogan is and all that, they would know about this. I mean, he's pretty much preached and had all these guys on that have talked about.
Well, and then especially when you seen him against Hoyler, like when they had their second match, that's all that was a lockdown clinic. And it was hilarious because like everybody was like, all of a sudden you started people teaching, shitty electric chairs and stuff like that.
Is that Metamoris? Is that the match?
Yeah, the Metamoris. And it's like, I remember having a conversation with Eddie and I was just like, it's nice that everybody got to see what we were doing. But I wish they wouldn't have, because now they're all trying to do it. And Eddie was like, yeah, but they're never going to catch up. They're going to do it for a little bit and it's going to fail on them and they're not going to get taught it the right way. And then they're going to abandon it. Yeah. And that's pretty much what happened. I mean, as always,
that electric chair is right. No joke, man.
No,
which one's that one? Is that the one where you've got the legs spread apart, or which one is that one? I remember one of your guys in the competition that I went with one of your guys at the submission only. Mm-hmm. He tried to get me in something like a twister or some type of electric chair or something. Yeah, it's
probably electric chair. Yeah. Like we, when we have guys from other schools come, especially higher belts, like that's what I go to. I've been doing electric chair for a long time. That's one of the things I regret about my last fight was that was when we started really getting good at the electric chair. Mm-hmm. And I was hitting it all the time. And that was my goal, was to hit it. Because that would have been 2006. So someone hit an electric chair in 2006, no matter what level it was, would have been something. And I had half guard when we landed on the ground, and that dude was kind of peppering me. And I was like, I better not let him hit me too much. And so I pulled guard, which was a mistake. But no, the electric chair is, you have lockdown, you're underneath that far leg, and then you're getting that leg onto your shoulder and facing the other direction. And people think it's you making them do the splits, but actually it's isolating their knees and then taking their feet outside of their knees. So the flexibility, if you do the electric chair right, the flexibility doesn't matter because it's making your knee joint go sideways.
Gotcha.
And that's what gets the tap.
Which one's that one where they actually run their head or their hand up their head?
That's the twister.
That's the twister. Yeah, that one's nasty.
Yeah, that's from the truck. And then
there's not too many competitions you can use that in, right? Because it's like some type of spine manipulation, so they don't allow it. Or
yeah, it really doesn't. Like if you've ever been put in the twister, it really doesn't hurt your spine. It'll blow your knee out, is what it'll do.
Oh, okay.
Like if you watch the Twister DVD, which was Eddie's first DVD, where it just showed all of his matches from blue belt till when he fought in ADCC, like he blows, and especially in gi, which is early fights. That's what they were all in. Yeah, he blows this guy's knee out bad because he wouldn't tap. Yeah, because that's the weakest part of it. Your spine's not going to break.
Well, you remember the ref called him on that. Remember during that Metamoris fight, they made them stop because he was doing the twister on him.
I don't know if they stopped him on that one.
I thought it was the first or the second.
Everything was legal there when he went through the ADCC trials to get to the first ADCC in Brazil. They outlawed the twister.
Well, I remember there was a match I watched. Maybe I'm wrong on the match, but he started to, and then they were like,
"Yeah, that was the ADCC trials."
Oh, okay.
So they knew about him. They were worried about him. And so they literally right before that tournament, they outlawed the twister. And so he got the twister in the finals, put it on the guy just to show everybody he could have got it. And then they told him no. And so he let go and then took the back and rear naked choked him.
Gotcha.
That's where that happened.
Let's take a break real quick. I got to use the restroom. I remember like doing an arm bar, doing a punch choke, little shit like that I was getting. That punch choke really came in handy. I was doing it completely wrong, but I was submitting motherfuckers.
That was probably from Coach Blake.
Yeah. I don't remember who taught me.
I don't teach that.
One of you guys.
I don't teach that too much. And he really worked with BMAC a lot.
And I remember freshening up on it because I was like, I remember this one fucking choke. I was like, what is it? And then I follow BMAC on YouTube. Yeah. Man, that guy's great, dude. I fucking love that guy.
Yeah, and see, he showed us that before because he told us, he's like, I'm never going to put this online because people just talk so much shit on it that it doesn't work. And it's like, but I watched him go through a whole room.
Didn't he do a seminar when I was there in 2007 or in 2017?
Yeah, he was the first guy that we had to do a seminar after we became Temp Planet.
Yeah, and he taught me the fucking walking your hand up and stuff like that. Like when you're in mount trying to get their hands up. Like I remember that.
Yeah, I met him when he was a purple belt, and I could tell. It sucked because I about rolled with him when he was a purple belt. He was at the first Midwest training camp in Springfield, and me and him talked back then, and he showed me a lot of stuff then, and I could just, you've been coaching a while, you can tell when someone's a really good teacher. And so, like, he was the first dude I had come out as
What was his backstory? How did he get into Temp Planet? Just joined a gym or?
Well, he was in a band. Like he was almost professional as a band. His band was really
very
good.
Temp Planet.
Yeah. And so him and his wife, like his wife was finally like, you got to do something to get fat. Like, and I'm not going to have you having a heart attack. And so they started doing martial arts together. So they were doing, I don't know what kind of traditional martial arts they were doing, but then they switched to jiu-jitsu. And yeah, because I remember he told me,
everybody does.
He told me he went to I think it might have been his first jiu-jitsu seminar he went was Hickson, because there's a Hickson black belt.
His first seminar down there was a Hickson seminar?
Yeah, and he wore a red belt. Like because they didn't know anything about it. They wore a red belt, him and his wife, and like he goes, they were cool about it. They went, oh, red belt, huh? And he was like, yeah. And
why did they wear it? Just fashion? Like they
just didn't know. Well, no, is they were they were a red belt in their traditional martial arts.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and so they didn't know anything about jiu-jitsu, and they wore the red belt to jiu-jitsu, and he was just like, everybody was cool, like no one called us out because they could tell we didn't know.
Yeah, there's like 20 red belts in the world.
They were just like, oh, you're a red belt, huh? And he's like, oh, yeah, funny. And yeah, so
dude, that dude's killing it on Instagram and YouTube, man.
Yeah.
Man,
he went. That's where I met him the first time was at the Lloyd Irvin. Lloyd Irvin did he called it MMA Millionaires, but it was like how to market and stuff. Because that was my problem. I didn't have any reference point, like just like you now. Like if you start your gym, you know how they charge people, how they run people through, how you start. We had no reference like that. We were just starting a gym. We had no idea how you did the business side. We didn't do contracts. Like I think I charged $40 a month when I first started, like, which is insane.
Yeah, that is insane.
And it was like cash, and like half the people didn't pay. Like I wrote receipts out, like, I don't know how much money I lost just off of that. But yeah, I met him out there with that. And then he went to Alan Belcher because I saw Belcher. The last one I went to, Belcher was out there. And then Belcher kind of started his own thing. And BMAC had trained with him. And then he had that video come out where he had that wrestler come in and he gave him a wet willy. And that like went viral. And then that kind of started it. He just kept going from there and started doing the 1 minute jiu-jitsu hacks and all that stuff. Awesome. And then blew up. Now he's got his own site. Now he's on fucking UFC Fight Pass, like, commentating on stuff. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Have you guys thought about maybe doing something like that? Because that's one thing I've talked about at my gym is that social media brings in so many people. And I follow a lot of like different Temp Planet guys on YouTube, mainly on the West Coast. I think they're more into the social media stuff. But like I was just watching one last night, the Covina Temp Planet over in California. All they did, dude, it was literally just kind of like a vlog of them going to headquarters and just filming. But like I don't know, dude. Like I watched the whole thing, like, and it's not like it's crazy amount of editing or any type of like you got to be some type of filmmaker. Like he had a GoPro, I think, or a cell phone and just recorded it. And it was so dope. You know what I mean? To watch that. And especially for somebody who's in jiu-jitsu to see like different people doing, like I watched the Daisy Fresh guys, the B Team guys, John Donaher's crew, you know, like seeing all their stuff on like Flow Grappling or, you know, just their own YouTube channels. Like, I don't know, it makes me even want to like plan a vacation to go to these places. You know what I mean? And have you guys ever thought of doing something like that? Or
yeah, I mean, we've toyed around with it.
I know you guys have some stuff up. I've seen some of your stuff.
Yeah, I've got all kinds of ideas. I've been working on a walk-in video for I don't know how long. I'm sure my guys are tired of it. I'm a big time. I'm a procrastinator, but I'm a procrastinator because I'm a perfectionist. I think
sometimes that can hurt you though.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because then you'll never put it out.
Yeah, and that's my problem a lot of times. Like,
oh, me too.
My other thing is like once I get to working on something, I can't stop until I'm done. Like I don't know how many, like when I was in college, you know, I would wait till the last minute, and I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg. I don't know if I waited till the last minute because I was a procrastinator, or I waited to the last minute because that's when my brain would work. Like, but all my genius ideas, or what I thought was genius ideas, always came at the last minute when the pressure was on. Like it would just pop in, everything would flow. Like I can't tell you how many seminars we had or camps we had where like I'm literally last minute getting the rash guard done at 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning and getting it to our guys, and our guys are printing them and getting them and like within 8 days and getting them in just in the nick of time. And that last camp we had before I got my when I got my black belt, like the mats, we'd ordered those purple mats that we have, you know, we had ordered those like in December, and this was September, and they came in the week of the camp, and the rash guards came in that week. It was just all, but that's when I work at my best.
Why did you guys
unfortunately
Why did you guys go to those mats, those style of mats? I don't really see those anywhere.
So those were the first mats that we got when we moved to the new location.
Are you guys on an elevated floor?
Yeah, because that was a dance studio when we bought it.
Okay.
And so
that's nice.
There's a dance floor underneath our mats.
Ours is right on the
concrete.
Right on the concrete. Ooh,
yeah, that's rough.
But they're
I've been on
thick,
mats like that. And
but
it's
luckily we're getting a crash pad in, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've been meaning to get. I forgot to bring that up at the coaches meeting, that we need to get a crash pad. Yeah. But we had a crash pad from our tumbling room, and I don't know if was the mirror broke when you came in?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And you only had that one spot. You didn't even have that other section. You guys just opened that up, what, a year or two ago?
What's that?
Because you guys have 2 mats now, right?
No, the middle room is our tumbling room.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I thought I seen like you guys had purple mats in there too.
No, they're tumbling mats.
Oh,
so
okay.
we found some purple tumbling mats too. Gotcha. Yeah, so we built a dance floor in there because it used to be carpet, and then we had stationary tumbling mats. But we built a dance floor because her program's like huge. Yeah. So we built another dance floor in there, and then we just have Dolomar tumbling mats, so they just roll up and roll out. So it's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, because I seen that like one of your seminars. I follow you guys on Instagram, and you guys were utilizing that spot because you had so many people.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Yeah, we did. So those are our old mats. So we had the mats in there, and then we bought those purple ones, had them custom made because they don't usually make them purple. So we had them custom made, and so we still have the old mats. So we have enough mats to fill our room again, and so we were able to mat whenever we have like camps and stuff. We put those mats down in that tumbling room on that floor. So they're both on floating floors, and we can just open up that middle door and go right in. So it's nice.
Yeah, I know your mats are nice to where you're not slipping and sliding all over the place. That does, because they have more of a friction to it, you know.
Yeah, I don't understand why more people don't get those mats. Like
the only thing is I've stubbed my toe on them a couple of times because sometimes you'll cut and you'll kind of stub a toe or something. But maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I mean,
I think you get used to it after a while.
We have people that do that, but it's like always the same person. And so I think it's the way that they walk or whatever.
Right.
And it's never, I don't ever feel like it's going into the crack of the puzzle.
No.
It's just, there's so much friction on it. It's like turf toe.
And it's not it's getting used to it too, because even when I first started at Helion, they have these mats, and they're really nice mats, but they have like this serrations, like raised serrations on it. I don't know how to explain it. I guess for traction. Mm-hmm. And I was just burning my feet up, dude, just burns everywhere on my knees. But I don't know if it's my skin getting tougher or me just consciously realizing like, hey, don't slide your feet and your knees all over the damn place. I mean, I still get it from time to time, depending. But I think you just adapt to your mats. After a while. But,
and I just never understood why people didn't use those mats more, because like we've had people from all over, from headquarters and stuff, come in and are just like, man, these mats are really nice. Like they're so soft and stuff, and they're the cheapest mats you can get. Like,
doesn't headquarters have like what do they have? It's more of a smooth mat, isn't it?
Well, they went to Tommy mats finally, but they did have wrestling mats for a long time. Nice. Yeah.
Those can get pretty slippery though.
Yeah. Though
I think
the
Body
joke,
Fit
the joke was
like
that
those.
it was home field advantage, because, you know, Eddie was a guard player. And so it's like, you know, it was going to be slippery. So it's like they weren't going to get as much wrestling pressure on them because the mats were so slip. So that was kind of the joke back then. But then he finally got regular mats in. But
yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I just went to Body Fit last week. It was pretty fun. They have some nice mats. I really enjoyed those, man. It's kind of like a smooth, but they have textured, like weird texture on it. It was really nice.
When we had the camp down in Springfield, that was the first time I'd seen those mats. And like, to me, nice. Those, like if I was getting anything other than what we have, like I would get those, because, you know, they were textured, especially when you see sweat on them, you could see the texture in them, but they didn't have the grooves in them like most of them do that burn the crap out of you.
Yeah, and I wasn't slipping and sliding. It was a no-gi night, you know, and I mean, I think we did like 5 or 6 rounds that night, and I never lost my
nice.
balance.
It's like the texture absorbs the water, and it just makes enough friction, but not enough to where it's going to burn your skin all the time.
Yeah. So going back to what we were talking about, so you kind of find out who Eddie Bravo is. What were the steps into you joining? Like, how did you, because there wasn't a 10 Planet here. So how did you go about doing that?
So again, there was like,
and were you training jiu-jitsu already?
Yeah. So we had already had our school open. I had, so like I was just getting all the information I could on Eddie and studying as much stuff. And we were, like I said, we were already doing electric chair and,
but you guys were just teaching yourself, right? You didn't necessarily have an instructor, did you?
Yeah, there was no, like I said, I had to get
old school garage type shit.
My first time I saw rubber guard was in a DVD that I got from Japan. Like that's how rare it was. Now that video is on YouTube, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so in 2006, I had my last fight in March, and literally 2 months, almost exactly 2 months later, me and Greg, one of my top students at the time, who's now a retired colonel, we went out to headquarters for a week. It was supposed to be a bunch of us, and then like Roy and some of the other guys had stuff come up, so it was just me and Greg ended up going out to. That's when they were at Legends, when Bassroot and Randy Couture bought Legends right off of Hollywood Boulevard, and they had like a cage outside, and that's where Eddie taught 10th Planet. Oh, really? And so we went out there for a week. It like cost $100 if you had an out-of-state license to train there every class. Carl Parisian, he was doing the MMA classes. I don't know if you've ever heard of Reggie Warren Jr. He has like he's basically a character, but we met him. He taught our MMA class. It was just me and Greg. No one showed up that morning. Carl Parisian had a UFC fight that next weekend. It was really cool. We were out there the week that Lesnar had fought in the Coliseum. So it was like Lesnar's second fight, I think. So he was fighting a Korean. Well, the Korean was training with Eddie. And so, okay. Yeah. And Greg is 6'4", and he fought at 185 and 205. And this Korean was like 260. And like they asked Greg, there was a little guy that was kind of their translator or whatever. And so he came up to Greg one day and was like, "Hey, do you care if we use you?" And he's like, "Sure." And he's literally like doing exercises with Greg, like doing power bombs onto his shoulder and carrying him like a baby. And like, that's how big this dude was. And so like, that was cool. Like all the guys, you know, kind of like you were talking about, like you're watching these guys and it's like, you know, Einstein and Sean Bollinger and all these guys that you've been watching on Eddie's stuff. Like they're all there and you're getting a roll with them. What's his name from, My Name is Earl. The guy that lost a whole bunch of weight. I don't know. He was on My Name is Earl. What else was he on? But I rolled with him, partnered up with him. I got to roll with Joe Rogan one morning.
That was it.
It was tough. Yeah. It was, yeah. He didn't tap me. Greg about got it on video, but he couldn't figure out my camera. That was one of the regrets. I wish that would happen. But no, I was just super happy. We rolled, I think, for 8 minutes.
How big is he?
Oh, dude.
I know he's kind of short, but he's like real big.
He's so huge. Like I can still remember seeing him the first time. He was wearing
he's still like 190,
the tightest 200? Rash guard and big, huge. And it was just like his back and his front were just balls, like individual balls stacked.
Hell yeah.
The crease in his back was like so huge. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, he's like a chimpanzee or like an ape.
That was before his podcast. Like that's how long ago it was.
Yeah, because he didn't start his podcast until like 2009, I think.
Yeah, so like it was like one of the best weeks of my life. Like it was just
he was the Fear Factor guy back then.
Yeah. He just I remember I was trying to like talk to we talked afterwards. Like he was super cool dude, and I remember I just saw he had a special on Showtime, and so I was like talking to him about that, and he was just it was awesome, man. Met so many cool people, and it was great.
Ethan Suplee, is that his name? Or Jason Lee? Which one of the cast is he?
Yeah, the guy on the left.
The guy on the very left? Yeah,
he used to be
Ethan Suplee.
Yeah, he used to be really big back then.
Wasn't that Remember the Titans guy?
Yep, that's him.
Oh yeah, that is him. Yeah, dude, that guy, he was on Joe Rogan too.
Yeah, like you said, he used to be really overweight back then.
So whoever thinks that they can't change their life, look at that guy. That guy was what? I think he's gone. He says he's dipped in and out, but he's
I think he
in
lost
his 40s
a lot of
or 50s.
I think he lost a lot of that weight doing jiu-jitsu, and then he kind of switched to weightlifting and then got serious and lost, because he talks about how he lost a whole bunch of weight and then went back up.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I don't know how people don't gravitate towards jiu-jitsu. It's literally, I mean, when I joined you guys, dude, I lost, like, I remember you even asked me in one of the classes, or you or Blake did, you're like, "Hey Gabe, how much weight have you lost?" And I was like, I think I lost like 17 pounds or something crazy in like 6 months, dude. I mean, it was nuts,
Yeah, I mean, that's what's nice about jiu-jitsu is like, all exercises, it's your body and adapting to the new thing that you're doing. And it's like, other than wrestling, but even in wrestling, you're not moving like you do in jiu-jitsu. So your body's moving in a way it's never, ever moved before at any other activity.
What do you mean in wrestling you're not moving like in jiu-jitsu?
Well, I mean, you're not playing off your back. I mean, think about how odd it is for you to try to shift yourself around when you're on your back. Like there's not
wrestlers don't like to be on their back. That's one thing I've seen.
there's nothing else to where you do that, and then hugging stuff and like there's no other sport or activity where you're doing that type of movement. So as far as adapting, your body's gonna naturally lose a lot of weight because it's doing something that's so foreign to them. And it's fun, and you want to do it, and it's
and you're learning something every time you go. I mean, every week, the team building, everyone's so cool because there's not like this big ego deal. Like, I can't speak for all gyms, but the ones I've been to, everyone's always been laid back. Even the most baddest dude in the gym, like usually he's even the most humble. You know what I mean? And it's crazy too. I always tell people, like, whenever I walked into 10th Planet for the first time, it was like the most unexpected group of guys who I thought were fucking killers. It was like just nerds, like everywhere. I'm like, what the fuck? Like when people think of like a hardcore dude, they think of some like, you know, real tough, like rough looking guy. And you go in there, you're probably going to get, you know, beat up by the dude with the freaking thick ass glasses, you know, and kind of, you know, like not really the part, look the part, you know.
It's a pretty awesome thing to have such a eclectic group of guys that are they're totally different, but at the same time they're always the same. You know, it's just my loyalty to Eddie. It's from like me and Eddie are totally two different people, but we're the exact same on the things that really, really matter. You know what I mean? Like I've seen him just like that first week I went out there. The Korean guys were literally the biggest wad of cash I've ever seen, like this big around, trying to pay him. And Eddie was like, no, you hurt your ankle. Like, I'm not charging you. Like, kept it. Nice. Yeah. And then ego wise too, like, you know, even at that time, Eddie had done enough to have clout. And I seen a guy who's in the UFC tell one of his brown belts, rubber guard doesn't work in MMA. Like I heard, like it pissed me off. Like I wouldn't even, and I was just like, what? And I remember we were warming up the next day and I was closer to Eddie than I am to you. And I remember Eddie was hearing the conversation that he said that. And he goes, who said that? And they told him, and he's like, he doesn't pay attention. And then went back to stretching. Didn't bother him at all. And I thought, dude, like this is your identity. And like this dude who you've treated like a friend comes into your gym and says that to you. And you just like have no care in the world. Like that's when I was like, I'm going to follow this dude. Like this is
very
my
confident
guy.
in what he's teaching. I mean, he probably doesn't have anything to prove.
He
knows it works.
Yeah, exactly.
We've seen it work in the UFC.
Yeah,
there's plenty of guys who have gotten rubber guard in the UFC,
but even if you knew it worked, most guys would still let their ego get the better of them in that situation and be pissed. And
maybe he's seen that in the gyms that he was in previously, and he just didn't want to go that route.
But that being said, too, years later, I saw on video Eddie fuck this dude up with rubber guard too. So
after you poke the bear for too long,
it's like hearing the stories I've heard directly from Eddie, hearing other stories that people have heard from Eddie. It's like Eddie always, it's almost like Eddie could predict this, just like the Hoyler situation. Like I've had guys tell me, Eddie told me years ago, this is what was going to happen, you know? And it's just like, that's why him and Jean-Jacques, they're like magic men, man. Like it's just like they know something that we don't know. And
yeah, the crazy story about Jean-Jacques too is that hand that he has, that he was, I don't know if he was born with or got an injury.
Yeah, he's born with it.
And how he uses it to like slip in to get chokes.
It's kind of a cool story of our lineage where it's like, you know, we're a no-gi school. Eddie's all about no-gi and not using grips, and it just happened that Jean-Jacques, you know, so he had to overhook more and you know, he didn't have that hand to grip, you know, and so he had to use overhooks more even in gi. Right. And so it's kind of a nice story in our lineage, how it's kind of like it makes sense how we progress to where we are right now.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Not to mention that Jean-Jacques is just probably one of the greatest jiu-jitsu guys that's ever going to live on this planet. Like
what separates him from a lot of the guys to you?
Jean-Jacques?
Yeah.
Just, I mean, straight off of a movie. Like I said, like him know, like somehow knowing stuff that we don't know. And then just, I mean, his level of jiu-jitsu, like just, you know, like James has been taught. I've never got to meet him yet. He's probably one of my few bucket list guys. I've met him, but I haven't got to train under him. But James has, one of my other guys went to one of his seminars. I've talked to other 10th Planet guys that go to his school and train. And it's just like his mastery of jiu-jitsu is just unbelievable. Like just little stuff, like how to get an overhook, Like, you know, I remember I heard one of the guys was like, we didn't even know how to do an overhook right. And it's like, you know, it's just like, like that's how detailed he is. And like, you know, just like stuff he doesn't even do. Like, you know, Master Eddie's talked about how like the baby armbar. I remember Master Eddie said that, you know, he said, John Jock kept telling me there's a baby armbar there. And he goes, I didn't listen for a while, but like everything, he was right. You know, it's just little stuff like that. And just, you know, and then you hear the story of like, you know, because he's a Gracie, like his cousins are Gracies. And like when he said on the Joe Rogan podcast that, you know, his cousins would call him up and like, oh, you want to bet your house? Like, no, I'm serious. Let's bet our house. Like, you know, that kind of confidence, you know, it's just like he just knows something that we all don't know. So,
yeah, that's crazy, man.
And the question I always have is that because of jiu-jitsu, or is that why he's so good at jiu-jitsu? You know, it's like, again, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, it's like because he's so wise, that's why he's so good at jiu-jitsu, or is because he is so good at jiu-jitsu it made him wise? Like,
it's got to be from jiu-jitsu, right? I mean, I have literally...
There's a lot of good jiu-jitsu guys that aren't wise like him.
For sure. And so I don't think it's necessarily all from jiu-jitsu. Of course, there's going to be those outliers, you know, that are just like, they're the 1%, you know, the guys that just took it to a whole nother level, like, you know, kind of like the Gordon Ryan type, you know, I guess for kids nowadays, you know, the Gordon Ryan just advanced, you know. And but I have literally seen guys that have started jiu-jitsu, and you'll see their day one picture to their getting their brown belt or their purple belt or their black belt, and they just look like a completely different person. It's insane, dude. I mean, the way even in the picture, how they come in of just looking just like a normal everyday guy, and then like 5, 6, 7 years later, and just even them standing in a photo, you can just tell the look of confidence, the knowledge they've gained. I mean, they're physically, they look different.
Well, and the hard thing to really express to people is how much your process of thinking changes, like especially from blue belt to purple belt. Like you just totally, and it's hard to express, but you totally think different. Like your mechanism of thinking totally changes. And that I know is from jiu-jitsu. And I don't know if it's from all the problem solving, if it's you having to deal with your body through thinking, or I don't know what it is, but that's the thing that's really hard to express to people, is how much, how much differently you think, the way you think. Like, not, you know, when I say that, people will think like, oh, you think about stuff different. And it's like, no, the way you process everything is different because of jiu-jitsu. And again, that's why, like, that's the question I always have, is Jean-Jacques the way he is right now because he is so farther in depth in jiu-jitsu than we all are, or is he so good at jiu-jitsu because he is the person that he is, you know?
I mean, and I think not even, you know, being on that level of Jean-Jacques, just even normal dudes that do jiu-jitsu as a hobby, just a practitioner, it, like you said, it changes your view on life. And everyone always kind of they roll the eyes, you know, the guys that first get into jiu-jitsu. I'm sure I'm that guy right now. But I'm not trying to be that guy. It has literally changed everything in a positive way. You know, you learn things about your body you've never learned. You learn things about your skill set. You learn things about what you can actually do, what's realistic. You learn about what other people can do. You know what I mean? So you're not actually going off of this false idea of, you know, like, oh, I'm this, I'm that. And, you know, you've never even tested that. You know what I mean? And I think also putting yourself in a situation to where you're literally, let's say, you know, average guys that do jiu-jitsu is probably 2-3 days a week, you know, if that, or probably 2 days, let's just say. You're putting yourself in a scenario where there's a lot of adrenaline being dumped, you know, especially at the end of the night when your guys are going to roll. A lot of people don't put themselves in that situation. So I think that actually builds you up, you know, and you don't see it at that moment. But if you look back, like I think it'll be February, I've been at this gym for a year. And I look back and I go, oh shit, like, you know, it was a big thing for me.
Oh
you know? Like even in competing, you know,
you like the last competition I saw you in, like I could tell your physique had changed dramatically.
A lot.
Like you look like totally a different person. And then like, you know, that's the other thing is just like you talk about, you know, you're dealing with truth. And that's why it's so important for kids to do it because, you know, again, I feel like kids today aren't really grounded in reality of struggle and hardships. Yeah. Like they just, we're a spoiled society now. That's why things are kind of unraveling. Yeah. And like, you know, when you play sports, most of the sports that we play in high school are team sports. And so it's like, you can always blame somebody else why you lost. You can blame refs why you lost. Yeah. And then, you know, you have wrestling, which is single sport, but then a lot of that is just pure, if you're a naturally gifted kid, especially in the early days, those are the kids that win. Mm-hmm. Like it's not really that much of a skill base. Like it can be, but for the most part, you were a stud anyway. Mm-hmm. Like wrestling just brought it out of you. Where jiu-jitsu, for kids, the smart kid can win, even though he might not be that physical. Right. Like the kid that's like paying attention and learning can leapfrog over the kid that might be stronger than him. Yeah, because it's not the females can tap out a boy. Oh yeah, and then that's huge for boy. Like I love having females in our kids class, especially. You know, that's one of my greatest thrills is like when a girl taps out a boy, especially a boy that's kind of arrogant and stuff. And it's just like, cause that's the best thing for that boy to ever experience. Like he's, you know, we talk about most of the stuff we're talking about is men having confrontations with men. Well, imagine how much that meshes psychology up when it's a female. Oh yeah, like
I've been there. I've been there, dude. If nobody knows who Dr. Jen is, go look her up on Instagram. But she's my size, and she beat my ass. She got me in a Kimura and tapped me pretty quick. So yeah, I know how that feels.
yeah. So imagine how many guys have to deal with that and their ego.
I think you just gotta let that shit go at the door, man. You know what I mean? And it's hard, man. I've talked to guys at my gym and said like, you know, what would have happened if a lot of these big like NFL type guys, you know, like big football players were walking, like we'd be fucked. You know what I mean? With that athleticism they have, but they can't get over the ego. They're already 6'4", 235 pounds, 250 pounds. They don't think they need jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? And imagine if they started coming in the gym.
Oh, yeah. Like all you got to do is look at NBA basketball players. They can't fight worth a darn. Like,
I know, they're fucking huge.
Yeah, they're huge. Yeah. Like they throw punches like girls. Like, granted, they can still probably do a lot of damage because they're so huge. But it's just like, you guys, thank God you guys can't fight. Yeah. Like, there'd be some people getting hurt. But
Gordon Ryan always says it's like fighting an untrained person is like playing with a child. Yeah. And it's literally, man, I mean, you know, I've rolled with a handful of black belts, man, and, you know, not even black belts, just blue belts or purple belts, man. And you literally realize like, holy shit, like, I don't know shit, man. Like these guys are on a whole nother level.
Well, and that's what's so beautiful about jiu-jitsu is the waters are so deep. Like you've seen guys that have toyed with you, and then you see guys toy with them, and you're just like, how is that? That's one of the reasons we don't let people roll when they first come in, is because not just the fact of we don't want them to get roughed up, but also psychologically, it's if they go in their first day, because people always have such a bad frame of mind when they come in. They think, oh, I want to see it's for me, and blah, blah, blah. I've had guys book fights and then come in and train and go, I figured if I lose, it's not for me. And it's like, you know, what are you talking about? Like, you don't even, like I always say, it's like you like never playing football and say, well, I'm going to go in on a game and play quarterback. And it's like, you don't even know what the plays are. Like, how do you know if you're going to be good? And yeah, they'll say that, but like people come in, and, you know, if I have them roll the first day, and especially if I have them roll with even a blue belt, like that blue belt's going to be especially a purple belt, like he's going to be flowing, barely moving, and still sweeping them, and then barely doing something and tapping them out. And so a person that doesn't know how jiu-jitsu works is going to go, I'm never going to be that good. Yeah. Like, I'm horrible at this. Like, this guy, you know, this guy was barely moving and I was going 100%, and he swept me and he tapped me out, and he barely like broke a sweat and barely was breathing hard, and I'm exhausted. And so psychologically that person thinks there's no way I'm ever going to be, I'm just bad. And it's like, no, that dude was just as bad as you are back when on his first day. But this is what jiu-jitsu will make you into.
That's the beautiful thing, dude, is knowing that. Like, my coach is half my size. You know what I mean? Like, I think I have like 60, 70 pounds on him, and he throws me around like nothing, you know, like nothing, you know. And just knowing that at one point, you know, of course he has an extensive wrestling background, but there was always a day one for everybody, even him, you know. And I think that's the most, I think that's the thing that actually gravitated me towards it, is that, like, yeah, I may not be this right now, but I can be, you know. And I think over time, like you said, my first time rolling was with James, and I think he was a blue belt at the time, and literally going balls to the wall trying to get this guy, thinking that, like, well, you know, I have a chain, I could put it on him. And no, dude, I mean, he just played with me like a cat playing with a ball of yarn, dude, you know. And it's just, it's insane. But it teaches you a lot, and you kind of answer your own question there. It's like, I was going 100%, I was doing this and that. It's like, well, yeah, that's your problem. Look at that guy. That guy's smooth, calm, you know, and you're just going crazy and just flipping all over the place and spazzy. You know, that's kind of the first thing I learned, is chill out, slow down,
and look at stuff. And again, to bring it back to that's why it's so important to cops. That alone can save a cop's life, is just knowing that, hey, I know what's going on here. I can relax at this moment. I'm in a good position. I'm going to stay in a good position. And that right there can save his life. That can save the perp's life. Like, and then backup can come. And especially if you're a female, like, you definitely need that stuff.
I know, man. It's insane. So you're out there at headquarters. You're working with Eddie Bravo and all them. And then how long before you come back and you start your own?
So we went out there for a week. The next year, 90, I think that was, I mean, I can't remember. That would have been 2007. One of my female fighters fought on a pro show called Femme Fatale out at USC. And so I went back. Eddie wasn't there that day, but I went back again and rolled. And then after that, didn't have a lot of 10th Planet contact. And then in 2011, I hooked up with Derek Stewart from 10th Planet Omaha at the time. Eddie was out there. We'd actually signed up for another. It sucked because we had signed up for a seminar like 2 years before, and that got canceled. And then for like the next 2 years, every time he'd have Eddie out, we had a big, huge fight that night. And so I never could make it. So it kind of sucked. Like, I could have been ahead of the game 2 years before, but it is what it is. And so we hooked up with him, went to every Eddie Bravo seminar I could go to. One of my old students, Jay Watkins, you talk about having first fight when you're old. He was a military guy, got stationed at Fort Leavenworth, wrote us before he was in Iraq, and he wrote us before he came here. And we told him that we did 10th Planet stuff. And so he literally got his house in Platte City so he could train with us, and had his first fight when he was 40, I think, maybe 41. He fought like, he might have been 50 when he had his last fight. It was crazy. But anyway, he's from Indianapolis. So when he retired from the military, he moved back out there, and they had a 10th Planet Indy, and there was a situation where that guy couldn't do anymore. And so he became a moonhead before I did. He had 10th Planet Indy, which he still has to this day. He just gave out his first black belt at the last Eclipse. So yeah, he was a moonhead, and then became a purple belt before I was. And so that was a big thing. He had Eddie out And I flew out and stayed with him and Eddie. And then I did the video back then. Eddie wanted you to know a certain set of stuff. And so, I think that was right when the warm-ups came up, the first one. And so I did the warm-ups and filmed them. And then at the airport, I showed Eddie, and then he wrote me when we got back home and said, you're good to go.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so, it's funny. I got the email on the exact anniversary date of Lone Wolf. So Lone Wolf literally had its 10th year anniversary on the day that Eddie okayed me to be 10th Planet, Kansas City. That's awesome. It's on the same day.
You were the first one here, man. I mean, where's the next nearest 10th Planet?
So there was 10th Planet Springfield.
Oh, okay.
Before us, and then which they're now Springfield BJJ. He left the association.
Oh, okay. And
then Sean Bollinger started 10th Planet Springfield. And then one of his black belts, Avery, he has Sedalia now. And
is that new?
No, it's been around for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, he had it at Warsaw. He had Warsaw first, and then moved it to Sedalia, which was a smart move. And then there's been a few 10th Planet St. Louis, but they just quit that affiliation like a year or two ago. Gary Meek was running that one, which Gary Meek's getting ready to open up his second school in Illinois. So,
gotcha. So
as far as Missouri, it's just me and Avery are the only 10th Planets in the state of Missouri. So
pretty neat. Do you guys get time to go down there and train with them, or
not very much? I've had some students go down there and train in Sedalia. We go to like I said, Gary Meek in O'Fallon, Illinois. Me, him, and Derek, like we've he was under Derek too. We're really tight family. And then Aunt Lopez and Lon Lopez, their whole family, they were under Derek. Lon's Derek's best friend. They're down they have 10th Planet San Antonio now, and they have 2 schools down there now. So
it's cool too when you're a part of a gym, because you can go all over the United States and technically the world, if you wanted to. You have the money, and you can just pop in at these gyms, and just train. Well, it's kind of like a little family.
Yeah, and like people throw the word family around, I think, too much, especially in jiu-jitsu, because I've heard people say that stuff and then do a lot of bad stuff to each other. Yeah. And but 10th Planet, especially Midwest, like all those people I named, like we're super tight. That's awesome. we have been, but when I was a white belt, like I knew those guys, and we still like when they opened up that school in San Antonio, like I went down there, Derek was down there, it's very important to us. I go to, Gary's anytime he's having anybody out. He's getting ready to open up his new school. I'm hoping I'll be out for the grand opening of that. So awesome. The world gets really small the longer you stay in jiu-jitsu. But that's a nice thing about being 10th Planet too. It's like, when you're in the association, there's so many 10th Planets around now that just like Ralph, he was one of the guys that I met when I went out to headquarters both times. He's from Germany. He runs 10th Planet Berlin now. Okay. And one of my students has actually went out there last year and trained under him. And that's awesome. Yeah, it's great. It's like the world gets so small. It's just, who thought one of my guys would go out there and train with a guy that I trained with, 10 years ago, and he still knows me. And, it's just it's a cool deal, man. And when we get together for eclipses and stuff, the thing about 10th Planet, especially for us old guys, we were the black sheep of the jiu-jitsu family. And we still remember that now 10th Planet is mainstream, and people still make fun of us for being conspiracy theorists and all that stuff. But it's we're mainstream now, and it's but we still remember a time when we weren't mainstream, and we weren't. And so those guys, 10th Planet is very important, because we stuck it, we stuck through all that and took all the shit, and still here.
I was watching this the documentary, The 20 Years in Orbit, that they released on YouTube, And yeah, they were saying how you guys were kind of just outcast, mainly, I think the big thing was Eddie Bravo kind of switching to the no-gi only. And I know that was a big issue with a lot of other gyms, which I don't know why it matters, but also I think like your guys' style and stuff like that, I think didn't take very well to other gyms. They were kind of upset about you guys doing certain moves and stuff like that.
It was just a lot of, to me, it was just a lot of hating. I mean, it's the same stuff that Bruce Lee went through. Like, you saw that's what cracked me up is like, you
history
saw
repeating itself.
Yeah.
Basically.
It's just the same egotistical stuff. Like, even when Eddie, fought Hoyler the second time, it's like he obviously proved that, kind of people discount how good Hoyler was. Like Hoyler never had a point scored on him, until Eddie tapped him out. And it's like, and he'd done jiu-jitsu his whole life. And so then Eddie does an electric chair clinic on him, a lockdown clinic on him. Then everybody's just like, people that I respected were like, oh, I've always said Eddie's half guard game was legit, but rubber guards doesn't work. And it was just like, well, and then I literally, the funniest one was like, well, yeah, Eddie's done the same technique for 12 years. Of course he's gotten good at it. And it's like, well, isn't that what jiu-jitsu is? Yeah. Isn't that what we're taught from day one is like drill. And it's just like Hoyler's done a knee cut pass for his whole life for like 40 years. Yeah. So why didn't it work? Like if that's like, you were acting like you were cheating because you were doing what you're supposed to do in jiu-jitsu, which is drill a move over and over again until it works. It was just
pulling on low hanging fruit,
it was just so funny, man, to see, it's like just like we were talking about COVID and stuff, to just see the overall tribalism take over critical thinking. And so it's just like, like you said, the strong, you just gotta be like, okay, keep talking it, and we'll just keep doing what we're doing, and you'll see eventually. And now it's nice that I just hope that the new guys coming up don't lose that perspective that like, hey, it wasn't always like this. Like there's a bunch of people that talk shit, and now you're seeing like, Donahue and Faraz Zahabi did a video where they were talking, where they're just like, yeah, like we were always told that we had to do gi to be good at jiu-jitsu. And like, obviously Gordon and everybody's proven that wrong. And Donahue is like, yeah, like, and so it's like hearing that stuff that would have never been said 10 years ago. Like if Eddie would have said something like that 10 years ago, Eddie never did. That's the other thing is, like Eddie said, everybody says I turned my back on jiu-jitsu. He's like, I love jiu-jitsu. Like I wanted to make jiu-jitsu more popular and have everybody love it like I do, like, but it's just that same thing Bruce Lee did. Like, you can't teach Americans this stuff. You can't be mixing styles. And it's like, why? Like, why? That's what we should do. Like, I remember one old guy he was a con artist, and he was talking crap on one of my old teachers, and like, he was like, well, he doesn't have the lineage. And I'm like, you don't think that we've advanced in 500 years? Like, you don't think us as humans have come up with a better way in 500 years? That's why I never understood is like the idea that, oh, it has to be the same as it was 500 years ago. Like, what other sport do we do that in? You know what I mean? So
yeah, in life and in sports, man, you don't get better if you're not being challenged. If this guy just like, oh, this guy is right all the time, how are you supposed to grow?
Well, yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, and then if somebody else comes along and says, hey, I think it's better done this way, or let's kind of take both of our styles and let's see which one works better. You would think that everybody would be for that, to make jiu-jitsu even better, or even in life. Like you said, during the COVID shit, why was everybody trying to suppress everything? We should have had everybody come out. Let's talk about this. Let's bring all sorts of different ideas, and let's see what works, and then leave it up to the people to decide, hey, this works for me. Because we all know, just like in jiu-jitsu, not every move is going to work for that individual, right? Yeah. He's going to gravitate towards a certain style, and he's going to find that along his journey,
Yeah. And it's just like, you know, Keenan Cornelius, I saw him. I think Gio or somebody was on his podcast, and he was like, the more I do no gi, the more I realize there's a separate set of moves that work for no gi. And it's like, yeah, that's all Eddie was doing. Was Eddie realized that, like, you know, I only have so much time, and especially if my goal is MMA, like I only have so much time. So if I'm wanting to do this specific thing, I need to train for that specifically. Like there's tons of 10 Planet guys, 10 Planet black belts that totally fine with doing gi. They're totally fine with they're not.
I was going to ask you, do some of them do gi?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's some of them that are totally fine with it, you know, like they're not anti-gi. It's just, they're just either it's not what they want to do, or they only have so much time and they're trying to perfect this. And they're, you know, if you're trying to win ADCC, like, you know, you're going to do gi. And
also coming from a guy who, like, you know, I'm a big no-gi guy. I love no-gi. You guys are the one that kind of opened that door for me. Fell in love with it. Even at the gym I'm at now, it's majority gi, but I have taken a liking to gi as well. I believe, you know, you learn a lot of things that come with that. But no-gi just always kind of has been like more, I gravitated more towards that. But to people who are letting that stop them because their area only has like a gi gym, I don't think you should do that. I think you should go and still go to those gyms, because you can still learn jiu-jitsu and then take that gi off. You know what I mean? And like, it's still, you're still learning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And there's good stuff from the gi. Like, like you said, like we talked about, like you learn posture. Like when someone can hold themselves to you, you learn to frame really, really well that you might not, especially in the beginning, you're getting more reps at framing and posture because you have to, it's a necessity. Whereas like you take 2 white belts in no-gi, they're not going to develop that posture as fast. Like they will eventually have to develop that. But like when you're developing that right off the get-go, that's your first struggle, is just framing and making space. Well, you're going to be better at that. So yeah, there's stuff, you know, you know, we used to have gi Wednesdays every now and then. Like we had a bunch of guys that would do gi, and so they.
Oh, at your gym?
Really? Yeah.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, we had some military guys, and then like Noe, he trains, you know, at KCBAJ a lot, and so he'd have to wear a gi or he wouldn't get rounds, and so like.
Oh, does he train down there too?
He just goes like open mats and stuff.
Because that's where a lot of our coaches are from. They're from KCBJJ.
Yeah, he not so much anymore.
He used to.
Yeah, he has a pretty he travels as work a lot, and so it was just more convenient on like Saturdays, especially. He would be down there around that time, so he would go there, and you know, just like talking about how everybody has a different game. Like, you know, we've always been a gym that's cross trained. Like, you know, we used to have lots of people back in the day train at our gym. We'd go to other gyms and train, and you know, like we've been to Littleton's gym a lot back when he was in Excelsior, and we used to go to
Cast Iron.
Yeah,
I went up there for the first time, and they were nice.
Even before that, like in Kearney, what was that called? What was Bill's schools called? Grappling. I can't remember. That's embarrassing. But we used to go there all the time. Like I said, you know, Littleton would be there, Trey and Witt. That's where they started. Rodney Borden would come in every now and then. So yeah, like Kansas City's always been a cross training, you know, city. That's why I think we all got so good. And now you're starting to see Kansas City like really take off in the jiu-jitsu world. And it was always good in the MMA world. Like, you know, we there for a long time, we didn't have legalized pro MMA here. And so our amateur scene was like top notch. A lot of our amateurs were better than the pros, you know, at all these other big, you know, states where they had it. And so it's like, I think that's one of the things Kansas City's kind of missing, is we don't cross train together like we used to, like, and that's just kind of hurting our students, you know, but
man, come on Sundays at Helion, man. There's like, it's packed there, dude. Sundays and Saturdays are our open mat. Oh man, there's so many different guys from different gyms there. Even your guys have came out there before.
Yeah.
I think they were a little hesitant just because we're a gi gym, so they were like,
"Yeah, that's our problem." It's like we it was probably about a year and a half ago. We tried to get a Sunday open mat going because no one really. We knew Ignite didn't have it and stuff like that, and we just have one or two guys come, and they would love it, but they'd never come back. And I think the only being no gi. We're just like, hey, if you want to wear your gis, that's no problem. It's just we won't be wearing it. But
and
so that's kind of our problem is like we go to other places and they're pretty much just doing gi, and it's just kind of like we don't want to impose our ourselves on that gym. So
and like I told them, a lot of the guys do no gi there. They just take off their gi. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean,
we don't care if they wear the gi. That's fine with us. So, but that's why like last year we're a We Defy gym, and so last year on Veterans Day, like I had Rudy come out, I had Bohai come out, had Littleton, and then I had Parada. So just in an attempt to get all their guys together,
I'm trying to do some of their guys
and see, my guys could see, the old school guys that have been in Kansas City forever. Cause I think that's a huge important part too is, I want my guys to kind of know the history of like, the guys that have stuck with it. Cause I mean, I know how hard a road it has been to back in the day when MMA wasn't the biggest sport in the world like it is now. And jiu-jitsu was, you never had a jiu-jitsu tournament in Kansas City and all that stuff. And, now they're having IBJJ opens and stuff like that. And so,
I know that was wild. That last one they had.
So
are you guys a big fan of the IBJJF? I'm not a fan of the points, man. Not a big fan.
To me, it's not even the points. It's just, because
I really enjoyed that submission.
The organization has just never been. Yeah. I've just seen a lot of stuff that I don't think is
AGF looked a lot better than what they had going on.
Good in the tradition of martial arts, like just the way everybody argues and like how people celebrate when a guy gets DQ'd and they act like they won the Super Bowl. I don't think that's martial arts. That's like soccer. Yeah. That's like faking an injury in soccer to me. It's just like there's no how you can celebrate that a dude got DQ'd, especially when he shouldn't have got DQ'd. Yeah. Like to me, that's like,
that happened to me. My first tournament at Fuji, my coach, actually, I've never seen him mad ever. He got fucking pissed off because I don't know. They were like speaking Portuguese to the ref, the coach of the my other guy that I was going against, and they DQ'd me on reaping, which I know I wasn't supposed to do. It was an accident. I pulled into single leg X. And I reaped, or he grabbed my leg and pulled it over.
The reap,
and then and it was crazy because the whole time this dude was spazzing, man, like grunting and getting all crazy and shit. And I don't even think you're supposed to talk during a match. And I don't know why they didn't give him some type of warning, but they could have warned me, man. I was in a novice competition, like you couldn't give me a warning, but nah, he said something to him in Portuguese. Dude was like, "You're done," and DQ'd him. My coach got pissed on that shit, man. Yeah, it's kind of wild, man. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes on at some of those tournaments.
Yeah, and that's why I think you're starting to see the growth of ADCC so much is like, and again, the rule set's not perfect, but for one, I think the guys like the no-gi aspect of it, like that's all you see now. Like, I mean, who's more popular than Gordon Ryan and Craig Jones? And they're not. When's the last time you've seen them do a gi match? Like. So I think people are gravitating towards that. And that's why I'm glad EBI is coming back on the scene and EBI rules. Cause say what you want about EBI rules, but the chances of you getting screwed by a ref, is very limited, and definitely you getting screwed by judges is very, very limited. Right. And so it's like, to me, that's all you can ask for. Like, because again, then you get into this petty stuff that is not martial arts based. Like, it's like, to me, it reminds me of parents getting into fights at sixth grade football games. Like, to me, that's the same type of mentality. Like, you're arguing over if something should have been a point or not, or if they went out of bounds, or or, you know, the judge DQ'd you and you shouldn't have been DQ'd, you know, or you get to the end of the match and there was no points and they give it to the other dude when you're the one on top and working hard. And it's like none of that stuff that you got screwed on can happen in EBI. And so say what you want about, oh, he would have never got this position on me or whatever, but it's still jiu-jitsu and you're still having a definite winner.
The only thing I want to pick your brain on, and the only thing I've heard about EBI is that a person can stall during the entire match and then win in overtime. What do you think about that? I've heard that before. Yeah,
it's possible, but man, like that's and
I think I've heard that from Nicky Ryan. I think
that's a heck of a risk. Like, and Eddie's frowned upon that too. Like, at one of the qualifiers, Eddie did like a 45-minute speech, basically saying that, you know, if you're obviously stalling to make it to overtime, like, you know, we're gonna, you know, which that was a in-house tournament, but it was like, you're gone, or we're gonna give you a red flag or something. But at the same time, you're telling me no one's ever stalled in IBJJF?
Yeah.
Like, that's all it is. Like, you know, we made jokes about how, like, I remember, I think it was Ant did one time as like a blue belt, and the guy literally wouldn't engage. And, well, I mean, look at Brendan Schwab. Look when he fought Cyborg, he ran the whole time, and they were.
Did you just call him Brendan Schwab?
What?
Brendan Schwab?
Oh yeah. Whatever it is. But like he ran the whole time, and then they were like celebrating at the end, like, and it's just like, that's you know, like, so that stuff happens, and just like ADCC, what was it, like 4 years ago? The ADC heavyweight champion won without scoring a single point.
Yeah.
It's like you went through a whole tournament without scoring a point. Like, so it's like, you could try to stall, but you're stalling for 10 minutes. You're not stalling for 5 minutes or 6 minutes.
No, I've had a guy do that too. He just swept me a couple times, got those points, and then laid in side control the whole time. Just kept me down.
Well, it's even worse. They get an advantage. And then they just run. Like, they just run around out of bounds. And, you know, it's just like, At least with EBI, that dude's doing some crazy leg lock stuff, and he's got a chance to catch you. You know?
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. Well, that's a cool.
And you're going to get shamed for it. Like, you do it in EBI, like the whole world's going to shame you for it. Like, it's not going to be like a big victory where, you know, you don't feel that type of shame in other tournaments.
Yeah. Are they having another EBI coming up, or are they doing the invitationals, or?
I'm not for sure. They just had a Medusa.
Because didn't they stop for a little bit?
Yeah. Which that was the one thing I really wish they wouldn't have happened. Like they had the momentum going. Again, the way I look at it is like, if you're a white belt or a blue belt coming up, like, who are you looking at to emulate? Like, you're looking at Gordon Ryan and Craig Jones, and, you know, ADC last year was just insanely like the biggest grappling tournament that's ever happened. Like, that's what you're wanting to be. And so EBI had that back in the day. Like, that's what made Gordon Ryan. That's what, you know, popularized Craig Jones when him and Gordon Ryan went at it. You know, Eddie Cummings, Gary Tonin, like, they were all made popular through EBI. So that was it. And Eddie switched to CJJ only, and I wish like they would have kept EBI going. Yeah. Because I think it would be the staple right now. And like, that's where ADCC is super smart in my eyes, is now they're starting to do the opens. And so now, just like IBJJF, the everyday guy gets a chance to be in the big show. That's awesome. And be in front of the thing. And it would have been, I think if EBI would have done that, like, they would be really, really huge right now. Not that they're not huge, they are, but.
Can anybody go to those trials? Or do you have to be the ADCC trials?
Yeah, the opens you can.
Or the opens, yeah.
Yeah, see, that's what they have, the opens.
Where's
now.
the nearest one to here?
I'm not for sure, because like, I know they had one in Chicago, they had one in Austin. They had one in Austin here recently, because I know Ben Eddy did pretty good in that. So, yeah.
What'd you think about the quintet, the B team versus 10 Planet? Did you watch that?
When was that one?
This year, I think. Pretty sure that's when Craig Jones got that under or backside toe hold.
Toe hold, yeah.
In between the legs.
That's the other thing, man. Quintet's really awesome.
Yeah.
Like, because there's such a like the funnest I've ever had coaching jiu-jitsu. We did Sub Challenge had a quintet tournament, and I think there was 6 teams in it. And so we had to beat 3 teams because we didn't get the bye. And man, that was like the most fun I ever had coaching, because it was just, there was so much strategy in every match.
I like the team aspect to it. I think that's pretty neat.
And you talk about stalling. That's where stalling, like, you know, it gets exciting, because it was like, that's what's crazy about quintet is like the stalling gets exciting because that's part of the strategy. Like,
then you're both eliminated.
Yeah,
if you both stall,
if you especially like when your guy beats a guy and then if he stalls, that's a win for you, because now you've eliminated 2 guys, 1 guy. And so like, yeah, like to me, that's like the best as far as entertainment and seeing everything, every aspect of jiu-jitsu. Like, that's the best rule set. Yeah. And it's like I said, as a coach, it was like you're using all kinds of strategy in the match, outside the match, getting people recovered. Like, it's like everything that I've done as like a personal trainer, and everything like all was utilized in that rule set. Like, it was so fun.
Well, Jeremy, I wish we could go on for another 2 hours, but I actually have another podcast coming up. I think you know him too, Joe. He's with We Defy. He's actually coming on right now.
Oh no, he wrote me the other day, and we talked a little bit.
Man, he's a good guy, dude. I can't wait to talk with him. He's actually on his way over.
Yeah, and that's what's funny is We Defy, like talking about a small world. Like Brian Marvin, he's a Henzo black belt. He owns all kinds of Henzos. He was one of the first presidents of We Defy, and like he started with us. We were his first jiu-jitsu school. So
that's cool.
Yeah, again,
I've seen you guys have done it for a while.
Yeah.
You guys do the whole ruck and everything.
Yeah, we do that on Memorial Day, and then Veterans Day we kind of are trying to do the seminar deal. But the Memorial one, we have that whole thing, and again, I invite the whole jiu-jitsu community. We've had KCBJJ guys come down, and we invite everybody to come down. We do a 5-mile ruck at the high school. We have it mapped out perfectly. And then like our gym's 30 seconds down the street. Everybody goes down there. Last year we rolled for like 2 hours. It was crazy. They did a 5-mile ruck and then immediately went to rolling for 2 hours.
And then kick them out of the gym. Like, come on, guys.
Well, we smoke a whole bunch of meat. Like I'll smoke a whole bunch of meat. So we'll have, and then my other guys will bring food, and so then we'll eat in one of the other rooms and have a great meal, and then we have a big raffle, and it's just an awesome time. We had an ice cream truck last year, and so it was a good time, man. So
that's awesome, dude.
So if you do jiu-jitsu in the Kansas City area and you want to come out to it and support a good cause, like I think we raised almost $5,000 last year. So it's really, it's an awesome, even if you don't do jiu-jitsu, it's just an awesome experience to be around everybody. The first year we did it, we had, there was guys from the UK military that was out here. And so they came and did it with us. And the guys exchanged patches and stuff. It's a really awesome, cool deal, man. Real cool community. Yeah, that's awesome. And,
especially for veterans, man. You know, veterans, I feel like when they get out of the military are seeking like that family team. You know,
well, you think when they're in the military, they're a bunch around of like-minded alpha males, you know, in confrontation, and you're not going to get that in life. And jiu-jitsu is probably the closest thing that you can come to where, again, you're meeting a bunch of alpha males and guys that are wanting to better themselves, and you're part of a team, and you're trying to accomplish goals together, but you're still having that physical confrontational. There's nothing that's better than jiu-jitsu to do that. So
that's awesome.
It's a cool program.
Well, you guys got anything coming up you want to throw out, or?
Not at the moment. We're hoping to have some good quality 10 Planet black belts come in for some seminars, but like I said, just working hard, open mats. We got some pro shows coming up, and got a couple amateur fights lined up, and just train.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Hey, and before we wrap this up, I want to tell you personally, thank you for introducing me to jiu-jitsu. When I first heard about you guys, I mean, I was like, there's a 10 planet here. What the fuck, you know?
We get that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, just hearing Joe Rogan talk about it, just, you know, sounded amazing. So I went up there and, you know, what you guys did for me, working with me, making it to where, because I was nervous, man. I think anybody that walks into a gym is nervous, you know? And I think that's one of the hardest steps. You know, I've heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but one of the hardest steps is actually getting a white belt, you know, and whether that's true or not, I could understand, because it's hard enough for the average day guy to want to go and walk into a gym, you know, a bunch of dudes full of killers in there, you know what I mean? But you realize when you get in there, man, they're great guys. You guys were, worked with me. You weren't there to try to beat me up or anything like that. I mean, you know, even you, when my first day there, like, you know, saying, hey, roll with this guy, you know, like you had everything planned out to where it made me, you know, comfortable, fall in love with it, and safe. You know what I mean? It's a safe setting. So I want to thank you for that. And because it's changed my life, man. And I know that everybody, you know, gets all weird about it. Oh, this guy's talking about jiu-jitsu, blah, blah. If you do it, you will understand. Yeah. It changes everything in your life, man. I'm not saying it's the end all be all to give you all the answers in life, but fuck, man, it helps. It helps a lot. And I appreciate that. You'll always have a spot, you know, in my heart, and I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And like I always say, like, you know, we would like to keep everybody. We would like everybody to come to our gym, but the most important thing to me is that you do jiu-jitsu. Yeah. That's the number one part.
And I remember you telling me that, and that's one thing I did appreciate, you know, because you always get nervous. You're like, man, I want to be with these guys, but it's just not working in my personal life, you know. But like you told me, you're like, I just want you to train.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the most important
and you've
part.
never made it feel weird for me, like, you know, because I'm not with you guys. It's always been love. And I think that hopefully that's like that everywhere, or hopefully that spreads to all the gyms. And from what I've seen, it's in a lot of gyms, you know, the people that I've met. So yeah, it's awesome, man. But I want to thank you for coming on, and hopefully we can do it again.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime.
All right, man.
Thanks.